All right, and start recording in three, two, and one. All right, and welcome back to the Reserve Squad Midweek Show. I'm your host Ben, and usually I have something quippy to say about Liverpool or about who we follow, about stuff that happened in the week. And this week I've got really none of that, just because of what happened on the weekend. But that said, I think my host is in a better mood, or co-host is in a better mood, and good to see you again, Rex.
Hey, good to be back, man. It was a good game. It's the highest scoring game, I think, in history of the Premier League, right? A bunch of goals scored, so
It's
we
got to
got a
be
bunch of goals this
recently.
time too.
Yeah.
I think it's 180, I think, goals scored in this fixture when these two play each other. So we were treated to five more, and it was an awesome game, man. We'll get into it. I mean, I have concerns. I always do. I'm a little pessimistic about Arsenal, but we'll get into that later. It just seemed like Liverpool scored very easily on their defense.
hmm and we'll get into that game. We'll try to basically cover every single game that happened in the EPL, and if we have time, maybe try to do a little preview for this coming weekend, because Sunday it's not just Liverpool and City. Real Madrid and Barca play, and they play
Ooh.
actually an hour earlier. So you could actually watch the first half of that game and then switch on if you want to do that, or maybe just watch the Classico, because there are plenty of storylines with that. But that said, before we actually get started, Rex, and do a little story of the week, I do want to do a quick update and say that we are now on Spotify. So if you search for the Reserve Squad Midweek
Yeah.
Show, you can find us, and then kind of play it that way. If you're like in the car and you don't necessarily want to stream on YouTube, there's that offering. So yeah, and I've tried it out, and it works. It works pretty good. So pretty I'm pretty excited about that. So, anyways,
Easy car listening. Easy car listening podcast.
well, there we go.
Makes your drive go by faster.
Awesome. We have the faces for a podcast. Maybe I'll put it that way.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. There's a reason we're wearing hats always on
a
podcast.
little bit. All right, all right, Rex. So, what was your story of the week?
I'm trying to, I guess, just get a little bit more excitement, just for me personally about USA. I was really kind of down and out about the two games, just in the friendlies. Didn't
Mhm.
play well, but maybe things are turning around. Pulisic started finally and scored. Sargent scored in the second minute for Norwich. Anthony Robinson was back and looked really good. Aronson looked creative for Leeds. Adams was solid in there. And Musa was back and played a little bit, came off the bench for a nice little cameo for Valencia. So hopefully things are trending up. A lot of goals, 4 goals scored by these guys.
Hmm?
And getting Musa back, we all know how important that is. So it was good to see him come off the
Definitely.
bench a little bit, and he came off and it came onto a wild Valencia game too. So it wasn't like just kind of just keep possession and run out the clock, so to speak. They were actually in like a dogfight, so they actually needed them. So it's good, and hopefully we can build on it. I'm starting to try to build USA back up in my own mind after hopefully a couple of good performances by these individuals. So we'll see. It's a team game, so and
I mean,
I
we'll
don't know.
definitely
We'll see.
we'll definitely touch on one of those players. Actually, I guess we'll touch on Pulisic as well. But I definitely have some thoughts on Aronson, because he's starting to really look the real deal. Um, and frankly, he's a key part of Leeds squad. Tyler Adams as well. Pulisic can kind of get minutes here and there, but it seems he's more of a role player, where Aronson's kind of showing to be the real thing. So yeah, we'll
Yeah.
definitely touch on that. Just stick on USA news. Like one of the U.S. Coaches at Stuttgart apparently was let go, so that was kind of a negative. But a lot of people actually think he might be in the running before Marsh, maybe to follow Berhalter. So we'll maybe see if that
Really.
works out.
Hmm.
Um, well, it's just something I've read, but he was
Yeah.
at Stuttgart for, I want, someone said 1,000 days. I don't know. It was the longest stint for a while at that club, and they normally have a lot of turmoil. So it was a pretty good. It was a
He's
successful
there for like
stint.
3 years. About, yeah.
Yeah. All right, and so with mine, I'm not really going to talk about the Liverpool game. I will say that on Saturday there was a really good Classica, or De Classica, between Dortmund and Bayern. So I actually watched the first half of that, and I probably should have stuck to watching the second half. The second half was amazing. when I caught the highlights because I switched over to the Brighton Spurs game, and that was a mistake. Nothing happened in that second half. Um,
Mm.
but I'm actually going to start with what I woke up to this morning because this is absolutely bonkers. Um, Apparently Mbappe is unhappy with PSG, and like all these French reporting, it's not just Madrid sources that are basically saying that he wants to be out by January, and there is a clause anyone but Real Madrid. So I don't know if we're going to have another Mbappe saga after the World Cup. If so, you know, there are a lot of there. Liverpool was trending this morning just because of this stuff. That's not going to happen. But you actually look at what City could do. City could maybe fit Mbappe on the left wing with Holland and then Foden on the right, and that is terrifying how that could possibly work. So I'm a little concerned about that. But to kind of I'm kind of going a little long. I'll actually end with so I'll have three. I'll end with another one. The Bournemouth story is actually pretty cool. It's maybe one of the more feel good stories of the year at the moment, because this caretaker Gary O'Neill. I don't know if you know this, Rex, hasn't lost yet. Um,
Hmm.
Two wins and three draws. To both wins and come from behind fashion. And they get a monster game this weekend versus Fulham, so they can maybe have a little separation at that point. So,
Yeah.
all who would have thought that after that 9-0 game versus Liverpool? So,
Yeah, true. Because I mean, God, 9 that wasn't that long ago. It feels like it was like a month ago, maybe a little bit more, and
got
it turned
just
things around.
looks a
So
completely different team. Amazing how just getting players to kind of buy into to what you're saying. You know, amazing what can change. So I'm kind of delaying a little bit. We'll get started with Liverpool and Arsenal. Uh, the lineup news. Well, for Liverpool, it was different. So I mentioned last week how I was worried they weren't going to do. Klopp wasn't going to do a formation change, and he actually did. He actually played 4-2-3-1 versus Rangers in the midweek and Champions League game, and it actually worked pretty well. And so we saw kind of the same thing. We saw a double pivot with Henderson and Thiago in midfield, but with four attackers essentially, with Jota and Nunez kind of together. And this is kind of the lineup I do want to see going forward. Maybe not with Henderson, with Fabinho
mm,
instead. Uh, but playing this versus Arsenal was not the best idea, and we'll probably see why. Also, Luis Diaz had to be subbed off a couple minutes after getting the assist to Darwin. I think that kind of changes the game as well. And with the Arsenal, they had a couple issues in their lineup as well. We talked about Zinchenko last week, and he wasn't able to go. So it was, in fact, I was not expecting it to be Tamayasu. I was expecting, well, maybe it'd
yeah.
just be Tierney. This was actually a
Hmm.
genius move by Arteta. Because when you think back, Salah didn't really have many moments, to be honest, and Tamiyasu basically locked him down completely. Didn't allow him to get behind him. Now, Tamiyasu is a little bit more defensive minded, didn't really offer a whole lot in attack, but he was good on the ball. He didn't necessarily lose it. He helped recycle possession, and frankly, it's just Arsenal was still able to get overloads on that side, on the right hand side with Xhaka, Martinelli, and Jesus. So you didn't even need the fullback to offer much defense offensively. So that was a
Yeah, and
cheeky move.
I honestly too. I think part of it was Tierney started and played. I think he played almost the whole game in the
Mm.
Europa League on Thursday, and I think this year Arteta's really worried about Tierney getting hurt because he has all those injury issues. So I think he was kind of like, I just start him Thursday. I don't want to start him again. With a 3-day turnaround. So I think he was like, let's put in someone else, and then he decided, hey, Tomiyasu can kind of shut down Salah. So yeah, it was. I mean, it was smart too because I think Tierney does need to be handled differently
Tony Kimmy got it.
now, just
Yeah.
because he gets hurled. Yeah, so now we actually have the players where we don't have to rely on him. We can give him a break. And it was great. Tomiyasu played good. He's a solid player. And it's kind of, like you put it in the script, it was almost like four center backs. Tomiyasu has
Yep.
played center back before, and then you have Ben White still at right back. So yeah, it was funny to see, but they can play different ways with different people now. They have the bench to do so. So it's really nice to see from an Arsenal standpoint that they can kind of switch formations or plug and play people and still get results. It's a big reason why if they're going to contend for the title, the bench is a big reason why they might be able to.
And this is the reason why I've harped on so much about the idea or the point of like you must have players that are good with the ball pretty much at all positions, and this is basically why it allows you to do stuff like this. Like playing four center backs, in a way, it was for because they were sitting back and being defensive minded. But they weren't just hoofing the ball, anytime they want. They were still able to play out the back. Liverpool could not press them at all. And I think that helped as well. But anyways, we'll get started. It happened within a first minute with Martinelli scoring. Frankly, it was the first really chance for Arsenal to even get on the ball. One of the
Mm-hmm.
negatives to Liverpool playing this different formation, the 4-2-3-1, is your 10 or your cam, which is Jota in this case, cannot lose the ball when he's going with it, because when that happens, then your midfield is outnumbered because you only have 2 versus 3 when you usually do. This is why United usually have issues with Bruno, and so that's really what happens. Jota loses the ball. Henderson is out of position. Thiago's out of position. Tsimikas is forced to cover between Ben White or Saka. He chooses Ben White, and Saka has all this room to kind of go up down the wing. He's able to square up Van Dijk. Van Dijk doesn't want to engage, and Arsenal just able to kind of move the ball from one side of the field to the other, and create mismatches everywhere. And it got to a point where Trent was isolated. Trent was forced to kind of work like 3 guys, but unfortunately he didn't. He wasn't able to stop Martinelli from making the run in behind. And what a good finish! So yeah,
Yeah,
not
nice
not
finish.
not the best way to start. And then Liverpool were able to kind of get into the game a little bit more. With starting with Darwin Núñez. Luis Diaz gets the assist. Luis Diaz is able to kind of get in behind Gabriel. And frankly, this did kind of see coming, as weird as that was, because even before this, Luis Diaz or Darwin had basically made the same run and tried a square ball to Luis Diaz. And it was either Ben White or Saliba actually stopped it. It almost looked like an own goal, the way he was able to stop the cross. And it was a good save by Ramsdale.
Oh yeah, that was awesome.
And and it actually looked like Liverpool had somewhat regained a little bit momentum in the game, and then all of that ended right before halftime with Saka getting Arsenal second. Frankly, I thought it was against the run of play, but in the second half, they definitely went up a level. It's calamitous by Liverpool. It's just a free kick. There's just nothing to it. Liverpool put a lot of bodies forward to try to win a header, maybe get something at the to go up at the end, and instead Arsenal were able to break instead. At the same time, it's 3-on-3, so Liverpool still had a way to stop this goal. Martinelli has to dribble a fairly long distance before he can get to the box. There's ample time to take him down and take a yellow. So Henderson should have done that. And then Martinelli was able to just do a simple cutback and was able to get Arnold and Henderson to just look really stupid. I can blame Trent now for knowing that his ankle was swollen, so it can be hard for him to stop. He's actually going full sprint, and if you have a bum ankle, that's the reason why he was subbed off. That can
Mhm.
be really hard for him. There's no excuse for Henderson to allow Martinelli to escape like that. And then, there's just because the center backs were up, they weren't able to get back in time, and it was just a really easy square ball for Saka. So good finish for him. Um, and then the second half, it was entirely different. Arsenal just completely controlled the play, and Liverpool were the one that able to kind of get one back that maybe they shouldn't have with Firmino. Firmino's had a fantastic start to the season, and it's a the interesting thing about this is it's a Jota assist, and I didn't really think Jota necessarily did enough when he was forced to kind of move in after the Diaz injury. But what's really interesting is you actually see Jota fake Saliba a little bit, almost like a an NFL quarterback when they kind of they kind of stare someone down and then throw the opposite side of the field. It's almost what Jota does. He's looking to the left side, and you actually see Saliba dart that way. He thinks the ball is going to go towards the middle of the field, and instead it goes behind him. So it's a cheeky through ball by Jota, and that's basically what leads to the goal. And then it basically ends with Saka getting a PK. A supposed foul on Thiago, I'll say. I'll let Rex maybe argue otherwise. But really, before the sequence, the word is calamitous. Liverpool had ample time to clear the ball, and they weren't able to do it. And it's desperate defending in a way I haven't really seen in a long time, to be honest. So that just kind of showed their legs were shot in that second half. They could
Mhm.
not win the ball back. Arsenal were very good moving it around, and I guess we'll kind of get started with there. I mean, you kind of talked about how this fixture usually gives us goals, and once again we did kind of get that. Um, I mean, I wasn't necessarily expecting a whole lot in the game because I saw what they looked like versus Brighton, and that's another example where they didn't necessarily deserve to even draw that game, to be honest.
Mhm.
And so eventually performances catch up to you, and I think we're finally starting to see a little bit of that. Liverpool to get anything in that game, I think, would have felt like a heist. But
Mhm.
the one last thing I'll say is Liverpool used to make teams chase their shadows, and I thought that's what Arsenal did in the second half. And I think Liverpool have been nearly outrun in every game they played so far. I haven't looked at the stats, but I'd imagine Arsenal outran them again in this game. And also, it's another game where Liverpool concede first, and that's been part of the norm as well lately. So, yeah. Sorry.
Um,
All right, Rex, I'll bring you in. What are your first thoughts, and then we'll get started.
Yeah, sorry, I was just waiting for you.
Oh,
Honestly, I think Arteta really got the tactics right in this game. Liverpool do like to play a high line. They Part of the reason why people are on Trent Alexander-Arnold all the time about his defending is because they push him up a lot. Like we know how talented he is with the ball, and he's creative. And obviously, if you push him up and use a lot of that skill that he has going forward, you're going to be kind of beat, on the defensive end. And I think the high press, the way to play it is either out wide. You beat it out wide with, Martinelli and Saka. And Martinelli immediately, I think they kind of targeted Trent because he goes up high and Salah's on that side. And Henderson is the
yeah.
you know, the holding mid on that side too. So I think at first they're like, we're going to target that in behind. And then kind of in the second half, it was more of the runners from deep. I think you put in the script Thomas at times was the only holding mid, and it allowed Shaka a lot of freedom to come up. And when you're playing a high line, deep runs too from midfield are hard to mark. So there was two examples of how they were able to break Liverpool's high line pretty quickly, just with good outside play, and then Shaka being a little bit more free. We've seen this free roll basically all year for him, and the deep run is hard to mark. And Shaka had not the best game. I mean, he had a couple good shots that were wide, but I'm looking at his stats,
I thought he
and he has
was
2 goals and 3 assists already on the year.
I
It's
thought he was
crazy.
spectacular. So many times because what Martinelli was doing, he was actually cutting inside a little bit. Well, we'll touch on Martinelli later on as well. Um, but
Yeah, he's been great too.
he's so quick with the ball. When he cuts inside towards goal, it forces the defense to go with him. And so many times, Shaka was smart to recognize basically, hey, the entire right side of the or left side of the field is now open. And so many times he was able to get the ball, just basically no one near him in the box, and it was just an easy cross for him. And he was putting in good crosses. And it's
Oh yeah,
his cross that does lead to the PK. But even before that, it was almost in succession, really. For like 5 minutes, it seemed like Saka had like four crosses in
yeah.
that same area. Just no one was able. Liverpool were really struggling with their numbers. So
Yes, because they would just push up high too, and getting people like you said, it was a couple times. It's like Van Dyke and Matip like rushing back to try to defend. Obviously, they're not the quickest players on the pitch. If they're going up against Jesus, Saka, and Martinelli on a break,
yeah,
it's going to be hard for them to even slow them down. But I do want to touch on. I'm a little bit worried about Arsenal's defense. I just feel like
mm.
Liverpool, the 2 goals, they were easy. It was just like I
Well,
mean the first.
they definitely targeted Gabriel.
Yeah, well, so the first goal was basically, I think Saliba stepped to the ball carrier, and then Nunez ran in behind where that space was, and it was an easy through ball to him for the goal. And then the second goal too, they just sliced through Arsenal's defense really fast. It didn't seem hard at all. So that's a concern for Arsenal. They have been struggling to pick up clean sheets. Really, they got one last week, I think, and they haven't had one in a while after that. So if there is one concern coming out of this game, I think it is the defense. I mean, the defense is solid. It's just sometimes they switch off, especially they score a goal and then they switch off and get scored on. So I am worried about that. I think that might be an issue if they do want to win the title. Just because like I'm looking at their defense and then City's defense, and I think City's defense is better, honestly. But they're getting there. It's still a new partnership with Gabriel and Saliba, and you have Ben White playing in a position where he doesn't usually play. So it's getting there, but that is a concern. It was just way too easy for Liverpool. They just sliced through way too quick.
Well, it was such a different because Tomiyasu was playing. It was so different because they weren't able to do that pivot with Zinchenko. I think Zinchenko would have been in midfield more
Yeah,
with
he comes and
Party. I
covers.
think they would have been able to, and Shaka maybe not have had as offensive a role because he would have had to maybe mark that in behind. But one thing that definitely happened is you did see Liverpool were able to kind of break through Arsenal's midfield because it really was Party at times. So if you got Jota the ball in space and they weren't able to cut that off, which is what you saw for the goal, Arsenal were in issues. They didn't see that with Spurs because you had Party had cover. Party always had someone next to him. Sometimes it was Ben White as well. But then again, Liverpool did play differently than Spurs. I mean, the XG was Arsenal 3, Liverpool 1, and what's weird is there weren't many shots in this game. I was expecting a lot more. Arsenal just 11, Liverpool with 3, but Arsenal 10 of their 11 shots were inside the box. And
Mhm.
so I think you kind of saw that as well. I mean, Liverpool did have more of the ball, but that didn't really matter. I mean, I'd imagine I didn't actually look, but I imagine it was either 50-50 or Arsenal had more of the ball in the second half.
Mhm.
Just Liverpool again were chasing shadows. So one thing I do want to ask you is, what do you think of Odegaard at the moment? Because he did have the key pass to Martinelli for the goal, but I don't really remember him offering a whole much after that, to be honest. And I actually saw their game in the midweek, and Fabio Vieira looked incredible. So
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on maybe him, or maybe if Smith Rowe returns, like should he maybe get a look in that spot?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's Odegaard's kind of weird. Sometimes he doesn't seem to necessarily have too much of an influence, but all it takes is like one good ball or
Hmm.
one good shot.
Yep.
So I mean, he's been playing well this year. But I mean, he's got 3 goals, 1 assist. He kind of needs to pick up the assists, more as a number 10. But I mean, he's kind of a streaky player. So like if he's playing well, leave him in. But if not, you like you mentioned, you do have Vieira who can come in, and Vieira already has 2 goals and an assist, mainly in Europa League. But he's starting to heat up too. So at least we have options there. But yeah, sometimes Odegaard just doesn't really influence the game, and then sometimes he's amazing. I think it just kind of depends maybe on team tactics against him, or just maybe he's having an off day. But it's good to be able to kind of put in Vieira if Odegaard's not playing well.
Yeah.
Or this game he picked up a yellow, put Vieira in later. We don't really lose any attacking part of our game, so that's nice. And yeah, we have Smith Rowe coming back eventually. He had surgery on his groin, so
Oh, he had
I don't,
surgery. Okay.
yeah, I don't think it was too bad. It was like a tendon. So he'll be back, I think, in December. He'll be training hopefully.
Hmm.
But that just gives us another option. But he might play wide. We kind of need another wide player. We have Reese Nelson coming back. He played in Europa League for like 10 minutes, and that's about it. I mean Marquinhos, but he's a little too young,
I
so
feel
he
like
might play
Smith Rowe.
wide. Smith
Yeah, I
Rowe.
feel like Smith Rowe was playing wide last year. He was playing left
Yeah,
wing and
he
giving
did.
Martinelli some rest. So yeah,
Yep,
good
yep,
call.
yeah.
Just
So that's a good option.
just
Yeah,
the only thing like I'd have to say is I don't really want to slight him. It's just it seems like he's a final third player only. I don't really see him dropping deep and coming try to get the ball, or when maybe Party
yeah,
is outnumbered. You don't see him kind of fixing that number. He's just
true.
playing too far forward at times, and that does kind of gives Arsenal numbers issues in the middle of the field at times. Now we haven't
Yeah.
necessarily seen that hit you yet, but versus City that definitely will. Um,
Mm.
and so that's mostly about like the actual game. We'll kind of talk a little bit about Arsenal as well. Let's talk about Martinelli because it does seem like he has truly arrived. He's got the most successful take-ons in the league. I think I saw, and I think he's just 21 or 22 years old. To me, he doesn't have a weakness. Maybe he could have a little bit more end product, but I do think the goals are about to come. He can play wide, cut inside, his eye for a pass. The ball just sticks to his foot. I remember there were a couple clips versus Brentford where Brentford were trying to press him. He was getting balls kicked to him that didn't actually seem like they were easy to control. And again, it's just Velcro touch. And so I mean, he's direct with his runs in behind. He can do that as well. He can go down the touch line. So yeah, what are you thinking about Martinelli right now?
Well, it's interesting that you kind of highlight him too, because there are potential issues with Arsenal trying to sign him to a long-term contract. I think
Mhm.
like Chelsea is circling, around, possibly interested in him. So, but yeah, I mean, he's a key player. We need to sign him down to a contract. He's got 4 goals and 2 assists already, and maybe it's not getting on that Brazil team for the friendlies. That's kind of like spurred him on. Uh, you would think he'd be on the World Cup squad, but now that he wasn't in the October like call ups, or end of September call ups, I guess. Who knows? So maybe he's feeling kind of slighted, and he wants to prove that he should be on that plane to Qatar, because he's kind of playing that way, and he looks great. One thing though, I will say that I'm worried about his minutes because he
Mhm.
has kind of been, I wouldn't say necessarily injury prone, but he's picked up injuries the last 2 years. And he's playing a bunch. He's been starting in Europa League too.
Yeah.
So I kind of would want him to be rested in one of those Europa League games. Just he's played so much, so many minutes, and at Arsenal, it's kind of the history for these young players is if they play a lot, they get hurt. So that's a big concern for me because, like we said too, they don't have much to replace someone out wide. If Martinelli got hurt, I don't know who they play out there right now. Maybe like Reece Nelson, maybe Marquinhos. So they lose a lot if he got hurt. I would like to see him rested a little bit more, but obviously he's on fire. I get why Arteta's playing him a bunch, and he really has been bringing it this year. It's been fun to watch because we know he's talented, but he was just young, and maybe injuries derailed him a little bit. So it's fun to see now if he can stay injury prone. I mean, if he can avoid injuries because he is kind of injury prone. It would be nice to see him, really excel and not get hurt and see how many goals and assists he could pile up because he's starting to heat up. And
Yeah.
he's second on the team in goals with 4, and Jesus is first with 5.
I
So
mean,
and he's assisting, which is awesome.
I remember him last year, where it might have been versus Everton. I don't know. It was sometime in like January where he was really starting to kind of show because it's so many players these days that play on the left like to kind of cut in, basically to their stronger foot, and they basically play narrow. He doesn't do that. He can take you down the touchline. He's got speed. He's also got speed to make runs in behind as well. He's quick. He's not just quick with the ball. He's actually pacey. And that's
Mm,
just that honestly, in a weird way, that seems to be kind of rare, with the way that wingers are playing, inverted. So I think you guys have a gem. But let's kind of stick on the team, at the moment, because I think the talk of title, discussion, is too early and almost not fair, for Arsenal fans because I mean, yeah, you're right there with City. That's going to be basically the narrative now until I guess Arsenal lose, or maybe there's a bit of a gap. But with the way Europa is set up and the way your squad depth is, it's just that's just a pipe dream at the moment. But that's another reason why that's not fair is that forces you to only focus on like challenging City and the way that you guys have improved just in the last maybe 18 months or so. I think it's worth celebrating just by itself. And I do think that as long as you guys continue to invest a little bit, you're going to be there, because the profiles you guys have targeted are all under 24. Like your main stars. I think I saw a stat basically saying that since Arteta has been in the squad, Arsenal have dwarfed anyone else when it comes to people scoring goals under 21. It's not even close to who's second. So the way they built the squad is very impressive. But no, the main thing too is it is so important to be able to play through a press and keep the ball by either passing to the right teammate or simply being able to dribble out of it. Um, and because more and more teams are trying to press you, and it's not just important, for the attacking players. Your defensive midfielders have to be, good on the ball as well. You good?
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Oh, I don't know. My dog's getting into something.
Oh,
Come here.
good. So I mean, so when you think of like someone like Party, Party is almost Rodri-esque, in that respect. And the only issue is sometimes he can't necessarily stay healthy, and you don't. We talked about that last week. You don't necessarily have the depth, behind him, but your defenders are good on the ball as well. I was high on Arsenal
Yeah.
to start the season because of this. Adding Saliba really just was icing on the cake. But everyone, maybe I don't want to slight Gabriel. Everyone in the back is good on the ball. So they make good decisions on it. You can't necessarily press them into making mistakes. And another thing too is your keeper's good with the ball at his feet.
Yeah.
And so the way the league has moved, from basically playing a bunch of low blocks to actually trying to, trying to, press high and basically playing high lines. Arsenal is built, to handle that. So I think there's a lot of reasons to be optimistic, not just now, but just for the future as well.
Yeah, because it is a young team. So, but I still don't think. Yeah, I agree. I don't think we're quite at City's level, especially like I know we're top of the table, but City've scored 10 more goals and they've given up one less. And they just seem to like a lot of their games, they cruise to victory. And, a lot of Arsenal's games have been close. I mean, they had to come from behind to beat Fulham, 3-2. This is a dogfight while City's cruising, 4-0 over Southampton. So I still think Arsenal probably aren't going to win the title this year, but they're in a good place. And if they can, battle it out with City, and keep it close as long as possible, they have a chance. But I think eventually, I think just that dominance of City will kind of show, and I think you'll see a little gap develop because they're
Yeah,
Arsenal's just quite not there yet. City's ridiculously good. I mean, the bench is good too, so it's tough to
eventually,
be as good as City.
eventually, I do think Europa is going to take its toll, unfortunately, and so it might actually come to a time where Arsenal or Arteta will have to maybe pick
Yeah,
to prioritize Europa or the league. I mean, maybe if you have enough points to where Champions League is kind of secure, maybe you will be
you
able
can
to
go for the
take
league.
Europa a little bit more seriously because if you win Europa, you also get in the Champions League.
Hmm.
But yeah, that really
Definitely.
needs to be their minimal goal because
Yeah,
yeah, these players
yeah,
need
top
Champions League
four.
football.
Yep, but a good point. If they're like in second place and they're going to get second place, maybe Arteta's like, let's win Europa. Or if they're in second place and it's close with City, maybe he's like, we don't care about Europa. We're going to try to win the title. So yeah, that's a good point. How European competitions kind of impact managers' decisions, and what kind of where are they going to put their eggs? Which basket are they going to put them all in Europa? Are they going to try to put half of eggs in Europa, half in Premier League, all in Premier League? It's going to be curious to see, especially with this like truncated Europa League and Champions League season. We're playing
Hmm.
every week, every
Yeah.
midweek now, and it's usually a couple weeks off, and so yeah, it's gonna be fun. It's gonna be a unique season because we never had a World Cup in the middle of the year, so it's gonna be interesting.
And we didn't actually say much about him because we focused a little bit on Martinelli. But I mean, you have Martinelli and Saka, but both on the other side with Jesus can kind of play. You can almost be fluid. You can almost like switch. That is quite an impressing attacking situation you guys got. And again, I don't maybe Jesus is 25 or 26. You're gonna
Yeah.
have them for a while. So yeah, good squad building, and we'll get to a team that hasn't done a lot of good squad building. Um, so I did focus a lot last week on Liverpool and formations, and we did kind of see. I mentioned how we did see a different formation in this game. With four attackers and basically protection in the center to limit those transition moments. And Arsenal didn't really attack through the middle as much, so you can maybe say credit for that. But they did attack on the wings, and again, that was exposed. That's been a similar story pretty much the entire year. And basically, the difference that I saw is instead of Fabinho playing midfield by himself, it was Thiago. Because again, Klopp made a mistake by playing Jordan Henderson over Fabinho, and I don't understand why he keeps doing that. Frankly, I do think the game changed with Luis Diaz going down, even though Jota did help get an assist in the second half by playing in the left wing. And Firmino did score. Firmino didn't start the game. But Luis Diaz I thought he was starting to kind of enjoy himself a little bit. And you missed his runs and you missed his ability to really just be an outlet. Like, Diaz is such a weird player. It's not fair to compare him to Mane because he's not like Mane, especially when in the final third. Like, Mane used to take players on left and right. Luis Diaz is kind of slower to do that. But Diaz will drop back in the midfield. He'll run everywhere to get the ball, and it's hard to get it off him when he gets it. And when he gets space, he is quite dangerous. So that was unfortunate to see. To be honest, Party did fall on him, and it looks like he might be out. I think through the World Cup. So
Ugh.
Liverpool would be out him for a bit. Um, Darwin did score, so that's good. He looked really good versus Rangers. If anything, the formation change will help. I think Darwin Nunes. If anything else, I think he suits us better than playing 4-3-3. But again, the issue is by playing this is if you do lose the ball a little bit, you're outnumbered in midfield. And frankly, the Klopp's doing this to add protection in midfield, but at the same time, you don't have recovery legs in midfield or basically in the back line anymore. Like you mentioned, Virgil and Matip, they can't necessarily make runs, make recovery runs either, and they're playing a high line. Um,
Mhm.
it's so easy for Arsenal to kind of get by, get behind Liverpool, and Liverpool weren't able to really catch up and do anything about it. So I think that's kind of an issue. Um, and really the problem is in midfield. Like Thiago's playing midfield by himself. Henderson, it was not playing a position. He's supposed to be playing holder. He was playing basically almost like he's playing too far advanced at times, and it's a negative in two ways. One, you're leaving your holding mate basically to himself. But two, the closer he gets to goal, the worse of a player he becomes. He hurts in build up. He needed to stay there. Playing Fabinho would be better. The lack of investment in midfield and right wing is really showing up to me. I dearly think they're missing Naby Keita. And
Yeah.
it looks like they might actually have maybe Keita and Ox to play versus City. We'll see. It looks like they're maybe back training again. I don't know if it'll be too quick for them, but if there's one slight shining bright on this, it's that because it does look like they're also going to be without Trent Alexander-Arnold. So we'll see Joe Gomez at right back instead, and
Kanate was back too off the bench, so
it's big to get him because Matip apparently got an injury. That's the reason why Kanate even came on. So it looks like Matip
damn.
will miss for City. But yeah, I mean, I'm kind of curious because this run of form, it's a team that almost won the quad last year, and really nothing has changed other than bringing Darwin Núñez and losing Mane. But I am curious if maybe if Kanate and Keita had missed basically those games from March to May, if we would have seen this. I'm curious if maybe they're the glue here.
Hmm.
But I just don't know. I mean, Trent's defensive awareness has been exploited all season, and I thought Gomez actually did come on and do a fairly decent job on Martinelli. So there's maybe some hope there. I do think he's a better right back than center back. So we'll maybe see. As far as the game went, again, I do think it would have been a high if Liverpool would have gotten anything. That said, a couple decisions went against them that I did think was kind of shady a little bit. And so I'll kind of bring these up and see what you're thinking. You can start really with the PK, but I'm gonna actually start with maybe the first goal. Let's see if I can find it. Because I thought Saka was offsides in the build-up, and it's kind of weird. VAR almost didn't even like work at this moment.
Hmm.
The Premier League has come out with some weird statement saying they didn't have the camera angle to decide. No, it's close. It's not like it's blatant, but it does kind of lead to the goal. So it wasn't even checked. So and then I thought Gabriel had a handball in the box.
Hmm.
His hand is up. It hits him. Um, there's maybe suggestions that maybe it hit his chest first and then bounced off, but again, that wasn't really checked. Martinelli's challenge on Trent. It is high, but I don't necessarily think it's a red, but I mean that was maybe a case. Simikis' blow to Jesus' head. I was worried about this in real time, to be honest. So that kind of maybe cancels each other out. And then really the PK decision. I didn't think. Yeah, maybe Thiago catches him a little bit, but it's definitely one of those things where there's contact and he felt it and immediately it went down. That's not enough to
Yeah.
bring him down, I don't think. So,
No, yeah, there was contact, but yeah, I agree. Not enough for PK. I mean, I was happy about it, but if that was given against Arsenal, yeah, I'd be furious. Just not enough contact, man. It's the Premier League too. It's physical. There's a lot of contact. And even that, I don't think was enough for a PK. And then, yeah, the build up. I think Saka was offsides too, to be honest, just barely. But
right, yeah,
yeah, I don't know.
it's not
There's a lot going
egregious, but
on.
it's like these
Yeah.
days, these kind of close calls are getting called in like pretty much any other game. So, I mean,
Mhm.
it
Well,
just kind of it just kind of hurt.
there's a lot going on too on that goal. So I almost feel like maybe they didn't even go back to check early Saka to see if he was off. The coverage did well, I guess USA or whatever,
Yep.
they showed it and he did look off. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know about the Gabriel one though. That's where I disagree with you. I
Okay.
think the Gabriel
Mhm.
one hit his chest first. I think, but you're right. I don't think the Saka PK was too soft, and Saka was off in the build up in the Martinelli goal.
Mhm.
I think
That's
so.
fair.
I mean, it's just we continue to talk about VAR. 1 week Arsenal benefit from it. The next week we might suffer from it. But they need to figure stuff out. We're tired of talking about VAR.
Well, I mean, it is kind of. I mean, this is pretty much what everyone. I think every soccer show is going to maybe focus on, and we probably shouldn't spend that much time because again, Arsenal deserved that just on their play in the second half. In the first half, I did think it was pretty even, but not in the second half. And the state of the club is not really good at the moment, and I do think a lot of it's self-inflicted. Again, the team is so close to a quad, and what did they do? They go went out and to get a big striker in Darwin Núñez, but they basically got that by selling Mane, selling Nico Williams, and a bunch of like role players, and the net spend I think was less than Bournemouth this year, and that's been kind of the case with these ownerships, since they've taken over. Now they used to be able to be really cheeky, with the help of like Michael Edwards being able to like scout people that just people weren't necessarily seeing, like and Andy Robertson, I think was bought for like $7 million for example.
Mhm.
Salah, Mane, and Firmino, I think combined were under 80 million.
Yeah.
So it's like you're not able to. I don't without Michael Edwards, I don't know if you're able to necessarily do that anymore. And it's just it's not necessarily a way to run a football club. You're seeing every single week is the same thing. You're seeing a lack of investment in midfield that's hurting. I also think you're seeing a lack of investment at right wing because Salah is going to his legs are going to be killed off.
Yeah.
The
He
more
looks leggy
the
already,
more you play him.
honestly.
I think he does. And one of the negatives to maybe playing this 4-2-3-1 or 4-4-2 or whatever is you're making Salah into basically being a wide creator, and he was a Golden Boot winner for the
Mhm.
last two or three of the last like 5 seasons since he's been at the club or in the league. And so
Yeah.
I would like him to get the ball closer in the box than necessarily out wide. And one way to maybe is play a 4-4-2 with Salah and Darwin maybe as the two strikers. That could maybe solve it, but I don't know who you would play other maybe Harvey Elliott at right wing,
Yeah.
but he doesn't track back and play defensively. You don't have the winging depth to do this, and so maybe Oxlade-Chamberlain can come in and play that role. It's good to actually see him back. He can also play a right-sided midfielder as well. And frankly, I thought the best Liverpool looked all last year, other than the NFT midfield, was that game versus Arsenal in the first game when it was Oxlade-Chamberlain, Fabinho, and Thiago. So maybe this kind of does give Klopp a little bit more options again, but you know, there's so many issues happening at once, and again, the issue for me is not necessarily the result versus Arsenal. It's they've looked like this in pretty much any game, every game they played in this season. So it's a pattern. They don't have the ability to press and win the ball back. They looked
Mhm.
they looked lost in that second half. And again, I use the term chasing shadows. I do think that's a pretty good way to describe it because it just feels like the longer Klopp's been in the league, more and more teams have adapted to this high pressing style. And the way to beat it is you can go long, but basically bypass the midfield, so it doesn't even matter. And it pretty much exploit the wings, which is what especially when Liverpool play high fullbacks, that's a really good way to attack them. Um, but just another way too is just more and more teams have press resistant players, whether in
Yeah.
defense or midfield.
Definitely.
Yeah, so it's just that's kind of Klopp's not necessarily adapted to that change, and I do think that's a problem as well. I mean, the last thing I'll say is Carlo Ancelotti gave a pretty damning quote after the Champions League final, and basically he said he knew how Liverpool were going to play. Liverpool are predictable, and so as long as you don't give the wide players space to run in behind you, they struggle. And so in the past, I've wanted a formation change like a 4-2-3-1. So to have have a creator when they're basically playing a deep block because sometimes their 4-3 has been stale at breaking down defenses, boxed in defenses. Now that doesn't really work anymore because they're getting outplayed in midfield before they can even get the ball in the final third, and so there are issues everywhere. I don't want to see Jordan Henderson start for City, but I don't know if
Yeah.
I don't know if Klopp is capable of doing that, and so we'll see.
Yeah. Henderson. Yeah. Why not just go with Fabinho? It doesn't make sense.
He started twice.
Fabinho
He
and
did he
and
did he did it was
Thiago.
he did it with Man United. Uh,
Hmm.
I mean, and another thing too is like they're doing these results with Thiago playing again. It was
Hmm.
one thing to kind of say, "Oh, Thiago's injured." You just kind of put all the results on that. Get Thiago back,
Yep.
everything will be peachy keen. That's not the case anymore. And so I'm not Klopp out, but I am someone that does maybe want to see him clean house a little bit.
Mhm.
They have so many injuries, it is absurd. Now, a lot of that is due to the style they play, but at the same time, the medical staff has to be awful. The way they're training has to be maybe cut down. Klopp's second guy is Pep Linders, and he wrote a book called Intensity. And basically, that seems to be the tactics. Hey, well, we're just going to run and chase the game. You can't do that with 30-year-old midfielders that don't have legs anymore. So,
Yeah.
not being able to change that is insane to me. I don't like the idea that they scouted Tchouaméni, and good job. You did what basically 99% of people that follow soccer would have been able to do. Be like, hey, let's go get this guy. And they did not have an alternative other than Jude Bellingham, who was also not available.
Yeah.
You're not scouting profiles anymore. That's embarrassing. And so something needs to happen with Ward or the people that work with him. Um, and last thing I'll say is I think it's time to actually make Trent a midfielder. Now this is going to seem kind of I don't want this to seem um, like a reaction, but it kind of is. It doesn't really make sense to play him at fullback the way you're doing. If basically the way he's playing a hybrid system already, to be honest, and he's not doing the defensive duties, so you're hurting that way. Trent in like that RCM kind of role, it solves a lot of things because he would somewhat track back. He would be a lot better to play than Harvey Elliott, definitely better than Henderson.
Hmm.
If you're not going to have Keita there, I would do that. So Trent's injured for a little bit. You can't necessarily do that now. You do have Joe Gomez. You can maybe play it right back a little bit more defensively, which I actually like. And you could maybe we'll see what Calvin Ramsey looks like. I'm more shaky on him now than I was. But I think basically turn Trent Alexander-Arnold into Kimmich. Um,
Yeah.
and so I think eventually that was going to be the plan anyways. You might have to fast forward that now, and you have to do
Mhm.
that because you did not bring in a midfielder for the last 3 seasons other than Thiago. The guy they brought in, Arthur, apparently has to have knee surgery, so you're not going to see him till
Oh,
January either. So, and other than that, I mean, you can recall Tyler Morton in January, or maybe you start playing the 17-year-old Stefan Bacic. Maybe we might see him versus Rangers, but again, 17-year-old, you don't really know what to go with him. And so, other than
mhm.
it's a dire problem right now because Liverpool have to get into Champions League, and if they
Yeah.
don't, I don't know how bad it's going to be, because you only have Klopp for 4 seasons. You're basically writing off 2 of those seasons um,
Right.
because of that. So they're going to have to spend in January, and owners don't necessarily want to do that. I would personally like to see them get a press-resistant midfielder. Kone at Gladbach might be available. Douglas Luiz of Villa might be available. And I would like to let them go get a winger. Kamaladina Sumana might be available. To be honest, we'll see where Ren is, and he's Mane-esque when it comes to taking players 1v1. He's what's needed. He can play on the left and right too, so that would help.
Mhm.
And so the idea of Bellingham needs to go away because he's not going to come if you don't get Champions League either. So
Yeah. True. But I mean, if Liverpool have an off year and an off year for them is, fourth place, and then they can kind
we'll
of
take it. We'll
reload
take
and
it. We'll take it
hopefully,
in a minute,
yeah,
in a
totally.
heartbeat.
Because I think that's part of the sign of being a perennial club is your bad years, you're still in the top four,
I mean,
and so
it's insane to me because I've seen this happen before, and because they were able to get away with it. You remember that season that Van Dijk got injured.
yeah,
So Van
2020,
so Van Dijk was out basically in October, and basically, by the time January came, you didn't have Joe Gomez, you didn't have Matip, and you didn't have Van Dijk. You did not have basically a healthy senior center back. They were playing Reece Williams and Nat Phillips, and maybe even someone I don't even remember. And they went in that January and they did basically a $3 million loan for Ozan Kabak, who also didn't play much because he got hurt. And then they did a loan from Preston, Ben Davis, who never saw the game, never
Mhm.
saw the field.
Yeah.
You can't. You've been in this situation before, and you tried. You got lucky, and I think maybe they got hubris that way because
Mm.
that was the time to invest. In that summer, they got Kanate, but that was it. They needed to do this even before that, and so I think you're maybe seeing that. So if they go into January and they don't address the midfield issues, it's going to get worse, not better.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, we'll maybe spend a little time. We'll talk about Brighton and Spurs next. Not a ton happened in this game, so it'll be easy for us.
Mm.
Maybe the kind of the shock lineup news was Yus Bissouma actually started versus Old Club, and it was a cheeky way for Conte to play this game because he Brighton normally play or Spurs usually play a 3-4 kind of 2-1. type way. They went with a 3-5-2, so he packed the midfield, and I think that actually gave Brighton some fits a little bit. And Brighton kind of went with the same thing we saw versus Liverpool. Um, Basically, Spurs win 1-0 with a basically a reaction header by Harry Kane. It's a really good header, but they just did not do anything. It seemed once they got the goal, they were just fine to kind of sit back and defend, and they kind of realized Brighton weren't able to kind of break them down. So that's at least what I kind of saw. I mean, the XG was under one for both. Brighton did have 14 shots, the Spurs 8, but really only 4 on target. And 5 were blocked, to be fair, but just Brighton were not able to get the kind of spaces they got with Liverpool in the box. So, what were your thoughts
Right.
on this, Rex?
Yeah, I mean it was a typical Conte kind of performance where
Yeah,
we just kind of sit back, especially after you get the goal, just sit back and defend. And I think Tottenham know that maybe Brighton isn't quite technically as good to break them down. So
mm,
let's just sit back and especially defend the goal, and we'll hold them to shots outside the box, and we don't think Welbeck is going to light us up on and Gross and Trossard
and that
will
showed
just
up.
manage them.
Yeah,
Plus the back three and Davis, Dyer, Romero, that helps. Basuma, Betancourt, and Hoiberg is basically like a very defensive midfield, so that helps too. And Doherty was back. I saw a quote where someone asked Conte why he wasn't playing, and Conte was basically like, "Because he's not good enough." And then
well, he
he
had to because
starts in this
Royal
game,
had
which is
the red
surprising.
card,
Oh, so he had to.
and it looks like that's not a good thing for Spence to not for Doherty because I remember that crit to not get a look. Even with that, now I
Yeah,
know
because Spence's.
now going to Brighton is not necessarily an easy game to play and basically make your first start. But
Yeah,
again, I guess it kind of worked out. I mean, if there was maybe a negative to the way the Spurs have their lineup or their roster built, there I do not think that they're good enough at wingback to really do anything other than secure top 4 because they're not gonna concede many goals. I do think it was a good bounce back for Spurs. They didn't have the best
yeah.
week, obviously. It's not just losing to Arsenal. They tied Frankfurt 0-0 in the Champions League game, and so
Mhm.
there was the kind of backstory was there was a little emotional scenes, I guess, behind the scenes. They lost, I guess, a beloved trainer. Um, Conte was emotional, kind of in tears at the start of the game. I think they were all wearing like bands as well. Harry Kane was actually crying a little bit in the post game. So sometimes behind the scenes, it can be kind of a family, like it is a football club, not just a team. And I think that's kind of why. One thing I definitely saw was Spurs were almost toying with Brighton. To be honest, it seemed they. Basically, once they got the goal, they realized Brighton had to go after them, and so instead of Spurs trying to exploit space, they were just passing it side to side. They would go to the keeper. Luis has gotten better at the ball with his feet. He's good at picking out passes now. And Brighton were not able to press Spurs at all. And really, I think they just tired the legs out by all that passing. So Brighton did have a
It's
lot
not.
more, not more passes themselves, but Spurs were able to just knock it around when they needed to kill the
It's
game
just
out.
not fun to watch. Like,
No, not
well,
at
I
all.
feel like Spurs are really fun and entertaining going forward. With Kane and Son, and now they added Richarlison even. So, part of Conte though is unfortunately it's taking away from the attack and putting it more defense in the defense, and we'll get 1-0 wins. We don't care. We want the defense. Which isn't fun. It's not necessarily fun to watch because they didn't, like you said, once they got the lead, they didn't really venture out
No.
much, and that like we've seen them in the past, just like rip teams open on the counter, and they have the players to do it again. But I mean, it is pragmatic. You're getting results, and a 1-0 game is better than a 3-2 win in Conti's mind, just because the defense showed up. So,
Mhm.
I get it. It gets you points, it gets you results, but man, I'd really like to see the offense freed up. But I mean, I guess he's like, I have Davis, Dyer, Romero. Like we can't really go forward because our defense might not be the best in terms of talent. So
I am curious
it's
if
pragmatic.
it's kind of a statement basically saying we can't go toe to toe with someone like Brighton. To be honest, um,
Oh, that'd be bad.
so it's a real shame Brighton didn't get the first goal in this game because
Yeah,
that would have forced Spurs to kind of play out a little bit more. Um, and it was just it was a shame because Brighton did have so much of the ball. The game reminded me a lot of that Spurs game versus Nottingham Forest earlier in
mm,
the season where they just kind of allowed Brighton to kind of kick it side to side. I think they had 600 passes, but it was nothing. There was no pressure until Brighton basically got in the final third or near the box, and then there were just bodies everywhere. They just
Mhm.
couldn't break him down. If there was one negative, I think Matoma maybe should have come on earlier. He did provide a spurt when he did come on, and it was maybe a time to get Billy Gilmore on. Maybe he would have been able to find a little pocket of space. He got like basically 2 minutes at the end of the game. So did Lamptey. So I think it was maybe a negative by De Zerbi. But I said basically last week I thought Brighton player to player were a better technical side, and this kind of looks bad. But I do think the gulf between Harry Kane and Welbeck is large, and like
Oh
that maybe
yeah.
showed up here.
Oh, definitely.
All right, and so that's that game. We'll get started with Man City and Southampton. City win 4-0. There's not a ton to talk about there. Haaland does get his goal. Unfortunately, that was kind of a fun
Mhm.
thing to talk about online. Oh, maybe Southampton will keep Haaland up scoreless, and so that'll be a win for Southampton.
Yeah.
But all kidding aside, we'll talk about City because this was impressive. And we'll actually highlight Cancelo. I thought he was maybe player of the game.
Me
Um,
too. Yeah. Amazing.
I've talked about maybe he can be exploited defensively. Obviously, that's not necessarily going to matter here. I've also talked maybe it's better for him to play on the right side because I've talked about maybe he doesn't have a left foot. Man, did that he shut me up here. He got basically he got an assist with his left foot, scored with his left foot. He's so good going forward. It almost really doesn't matter. But yeah, even in the first minute in the game, he's able to make a run and to basically he crosses the ball with his left foot to Mahrez, and they could have scored like 30 seconds into the game.
Mhm.
It was, but yeah, I mean goals from Cancelo, Foden scores again. Mahrez actually looks pretty good. He's kind of been we haven't seen him a whole lot this season, so he finally got his goal, and then yeah, Holland finally made it 4-0. And one thing to kind of touch on with Holland real quick is it was very similar to me to the Bournemouth game. Holland wasn't necessarily scoring and he wasn't passing, but man, anytime he made a run, he was drawing so many people to him. It opened up so many spaces. Like the
Yeah.
Foden's goal literally happens because Joe Ariba or whoever the center back is, he follows Holland's run and just leaves Foden completely unmarked after Kevin De Bruyne feeds it to him. So yeah, what were your thoughts, Rex?
Yeah, it was cruise control for City.
Yeah,
They've had a couple games where it's just easy for them. I mean, Foden was great. He continues to score. I think De Bruyne got an assist
he did.
to.
Yeah.
He's got what, 9 now. We talked about like going for his own record that he broke of 20 assists in the Premier League, and he's got 9 already. So, watch out for that again. And then, like you said, Holland scored. But for me, it's just these games are so easy that as
Yeah.
a player, they're probably not even tired. They dominate from start to finish. It's almost like a training match, and
It is.
it'll help them, especially because they do want to do much better in the Champions League. So it'll just help them in the long run, and they have the bench players to be able to slog games, tough games out even, and so it just makes it even easier for them. I feel like just you know not even tired after this game at all. It's a training match, so it just plays into the how good they are and how important like dominating some matches can be because you can kind of put in some younger players. Get Grealish going, get Julian Alvarez going. Gomez got in too, and then you have Cole Palmer and Rigo Lewis, the young guys getting in. So it was just a cruise control game. It's part of the reason why I don't think Arsenal could ever catch City in a title race, just because Arsenal don't really have that many cruise control games. They have a couple, but City, it seems like every other week it's a cruise control game for them.
Well,
And City, by the way, undefeated still.
one thing you have to do, I think you must play a 4-3-3 versus them. So I feel like Arteta has done that sometimes. And you can do that with Partey. I don't know if you could do that with Odegaard. But maybe. But if you can't do 2v2, or two v three basically because what they did in this game it was Rodri and Bernardo Silva as the pivot, and they just
Mhm.
you actually had you saw Mahrez actually helping bat a little bit defensively as well. But you can't press them. You can't press them off the ball, and so you can't allow them space. You can't ever let Rodri have time on the ball. That's another issue too.
Yeah,
Um,
true.
and
Still pick out that pass.
that kept happening. Like what's crazy is like Southampton have actually given Pep fits in a lot of games over the years, or at least Hassan Hoodle's team. And what's kind of scary to me, like they drew both games last year. I don't think people will remember that, and that the only change has been Brocha's not on the team anymore. So
Yeah.
you definitely kind of saw that you don't have the outlet like they used to, but Southampton had been able to press City and give them problems, but these days you can't play a high line. That was when City had a false nine. City don't have a false nine anymore. They have the best number nine in the world. And so when you try to press, and you have to press high at the first point. And the reason why you press high, and when you press high, what you do is your midfield then has to follow. And that's the reason why you hear about high lines, because otherwise there's a giant gap. You can't have gaps. And so the problem with that is you can just go long now. City used to not be able to do this, and now they can. They can just go long with Holland, or actually you saw Cancelo being able to make a run in behind, and they were able to go long that way. City were far more direct than I've seen them in the past, and when I think of how Liverpool have played them in the past, again, like I said last week, how they played Arsenal, they're not going to be able to play the same way. So,
Yeah. Hmm.
I mean, do you have any thoughts on Southampton? Are you worried a little bit for them?
Oh man. I'm always a little bit worried about them. You know, they've lost four in a row.
Hmm.
So yeah, I'm starting to worry. But I also feel like the Southampton team has been worse in previous seasons and have managed to stay up.
Hmm.
I mean they're 1 point above the drop zone right now, and they're in 17th. So yeah, it's definitely time to worry. Losing four in a row is not good at all. But you know, they need to score more. They haven't scored enough.
Hmm. Yeah.
I mean, in and around where they are, it's about, it's not terrible, 6 goals, but, like you said, just losing Broja, they didn't really replace them. Some of their strikers, like we don't know. I don't know if, how good Che Adams is. He can be good, but he's also inconsistent.
Hmm.
And you have
Yeah.
like Adam Armstrong up there. Ward Prowse can only do so much. He needs a little bit more supporting cast around him. I kind of wish they had Broja again, honestly, or at least gone out and gotten someone to kind of replace him. That would have helped.
Yeah.
But yeah, I am starting to worry about him, Ben, because 4 losses in a row is not good, and it just doesn't seem like they're even competitive in some of these games.
Yeah, and that's what's negative is you haven't really seen a way of them kind of switching it up as well,
Yeah,
and so it's one of those things where like this has worked for Hasenhüttl in the past. Again, maybe the World Cup and having rest will help someone like him because he is one of those guys that's kind of adapted early in the basically in the league when it comes to like pressing as like a lower club, and so
yeah,
yeah, again, you can't really judge them for City, but it is starting to kind of mimic. The performances are starting to look similar, whether it's City or versus Everton. So it's
yeah.
and
True.
that's kind of a good way to kind of segue here. We'll go with Everton United and see how we're doing for time. I can't tell. Oh, yeah, it's not that bad. It's actually a lot better than I thought.
Ooh.
So our buddy Alex, well, he had something to celebrate in this game, although it didn't necessarily start off that way. But United do win 2-1. The kind of interesting thing here is we did see Rashford and Martial enter the starting lineup, and we saw Casemiro. So a little different United squad, and the back line. Again, no Maguire or Varane, so we saw Lindelof and Martinez, and then Shaw. So maybe the kind of highlight was Martial was only able to go basically 28 minutes or so. So Ronaldo came in, and that actually ended up working a little bit for United. But yeah, it got started early with Alex Iwobi with an incredible finish. Onana wins the
Oh
ball
yeah.
off Casemiro. Alex was just cursing him a little bit on our phone. But that actually ended up coming back. He ended up kind of making up for that. Iwobi fired from distance, and it's an incredible shot. So
Mm.
that was pretty cool to see. Like, Washington were playing like Tennessee in the NFL, and I didn't want to watch that game, so I was happy to turn to watch that at least at the moment. And then Anthony was able to get United back in the game. It's another terrible mistake by Idrissa Gueye, second week in a row. If Everton have an issue right now, they have an issue at the back with the pace. But it's guy in the
Mhm.
middle. He's second week in a row. He's just a lazy giveaway that's led to a goal. This is actually really good pace by Anthony. I was kind of worried a little bit about that, but at least he's quick with the ball at his feet. I don't know if he's quick necessarily, making runs in behind, but yeah, he showed good pace here to beat Mikolenko to the ball and had a great first touch. The touch set up the goal to get him on his left foot, and it's a good finish. And it's 3 out of 3 to start his United
Yeah.
career. So they paid a lot of money to bring him in, and Ten Hag knows him well, and maybe that's why they did it, and it's showing up well for them. And then
Yeah, it's been a good buy.
yeah, and then United were able to go up with a Ronaldo goal. Casemiro, he made a mistake for the Uruguay goal. Was able to he actually made a mess of things in the beginning with a bad touch, but he's able to win the ball back off Uruguay. So score 1-1, settled there, and then Casemiro was able to feed Ronaldo in. But the issue with this goal is Ronaldo just absolutely burned Seamus Coleman and Connor Cody for pace, and that's kind of where Everton maybe you don't want to say Mina would necessarily play over Cody because Cody has been good, but they need
Yeah.
that Patterson guy back. Patterson looked great versus Liverpool, and they Coleman is not that player. Um,
No.
so what were you thinking about this, Rex?
Oh man, just from a United standpoint, I'm worried about Martial. He
Yeah.
kind of has been part of their revival this year. In Premier League and Europa League combined, he's played in 4 games and he has 3 goals and 2 assists. So he's really starting to heat up. He had an assist in this game too before he got hurt. So that's going to be a huge miss for me. I know Ronaldo came in and Ronaldo scored, but Ronaldo's kind of I don't know if he's necessarily that locker room guy that you really want to play hard for. He seems kind of like he's not a good teammate and he doesn't really want to be at United. So that might add to you know the miss of Martial on the field, but also just maybe he's more of a guy you want to play with versus Ronaldo who gets mad when you don't pass him the ball. So that's a big loss for him.
I
But
agree.
Everton's been on a bit of a revival themselves under Lampard. They haven't been an easy out. So
Hmm.
I think this was actually a good win for United. And after that ridiculous Iwobi strike, they had to come from behind too. So you kind of saw Ten Hag kind of switch things up at halftime, and I think those changes were pretty positive. It showed, and they were able to come from behind and get a win. And it wasn't pretty at times, but Everton's a scrappy team. I think this is a pretty big statement game for them, honestly. And they're not doing too bad anymore. I think they're in fifth place. Yeah, they're in fifth place, 1 point down out of fourth. So really, after losing their 2 first games, they've only gone on to lose one more after that. So being in
Hmm.
fifth place, it's a great spot for them, and I think they're going to be knocking on that Champions League door. I don't, Casemiro made a mistake in this one. I think he'll kind of settle down
I do
and
too.
help out too.
Yeah.
Yeah, hopefully, because he's a good player. He doesn't really make mistakes very often, so I think it's just a nerves thing and settling down with United and playing more. He'll prove that he's a good player.
Well,
He won't make those mistakes very often.
I do think you're right to touch on Martial. I think maybe he's kind of the glue. Ronaldo. Maybe if Ronaldo had played versus Liverpool, uh, or maybe played the whole game, maybe Liverpool would have been able to finish that game, like drawing them at Old Trafford because Martial and Rashford have a really good connection when they play together. That's definitely something I've noticed. They came on as subs in the midweek in the Europa game, or I guess yeah, it was Europa, where they were losing 1-0 at halftime, and just immediately everything changed, and they both got a goal each, so they ended up coming back to win, and to kind of to switch from Martial to Rashford. I think Rashford is better for them on the left side. So I don't necessarily like him playing at striker. I think he's better for them on the left side than Jaden Sancho. So I don't really
Hmm.
know where you play Jaden Sancho at the moment.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he's kind of streaky too, Sancho. What does he have? There's a couple games where he does play well and he scores, and then there's a couple games where he's kind of non-existent out there.
He's very he reminds me a lot of Pulisic, and it's kind of funny, and both from Dortmund.
Mm.
But it seems they need to be in the right situation to basically excel. To be honest, they both want to cut the ball onto their stronger foot and play from the left side. Both are very half space kind of players. So
Yeah.
he can be a link up guy. He's good to pass the ball to in the box. He can pick the right passes. He has started to score a little bit for them. So you can maybe he is starting to add some goals that way, but he's also not really great off the ball. He's not good, in making runs or offering a whole lot pressing or tracking back.
True.
So it's just, maybe he just Ten Hag needs to coach him up a little bit more. I mean, there's clearly a player there, but it's just
Yeah.
you need to find the situation for him. Um,
Mhm.
to focus on Everton, though, you kind of mentioned how they are kind of in a better bit of form right now, and definitely from where they were last year. Uh,
Oh yeah.
it's weird to say because they did lose this game, and I did think they were outplayed in that second half, but there are a lot of positives to take just because they got Calvert Lewin back. So you finally got
Mhm.
him to return. And I don't know if you got to notice this, but they were able to bring on James Garner. He was able to make his Everton
Yeah.
debut. And our buddy
Mhm.
Alex, actually, he was upset when United sold this guy in the
Yeah.
summer. So it was interesting to kind of see him come on. And, he didn't see the ball much, but I thought he actually looked pretty tidy on the ball. So, you know,
Yeah, he should be a solid player for them.
it'll be interesting to see what Lampard has for him going forward. Especially if Idrissa Gueye is going to be as bad as he is. Is Gardner's a defensive kind of minded midfielder, right? So he can
Yeah.
maybe slot in there. So
Yeah.
that'll be something to maybe see.
And he's another young player too, and I've been impressed with Everton after like they had a terrible start. I mean, really bad, and they've kind of turned things around. Honestly, I mean this isn't good, the loss, but they kind of hung with them, and
Yeah,
they,
I can agree with
you
that.
know, it wasn't the best game from some of their players. You'd like them to be able to hold on to the win, but United's pretty good this year. I think they're kind of an underrated team, and I kind of feel the same way about Everton. Honestly, they're in 12th right now. They're kind of on a heck of a run considering how bad they were at the beginning of the season.
I mean, I remember when United played Southampton. I remember kind of touching on this. They had something like 300 passes completed. It was 510 in this game. And Everton have actually been pretty good at pressing off the ball. When you think of Onana and Arobi, and Guy, that the midfield three has been very good at winning the ball back, and so that was a pretty good that was pretty impressive. The way they were able to kind of do that. So you may be starting to see that change a little bit. You are seeing Ten Hag have a little influence in how they like to play.
Mhm.
So that can only be good, really, for United going forward.
Yeah, I think so.
Right, and so we'll move on to Chelsea and Wolves. This one ends 3-0. When I first saw the starting lineup, I was actually a little worried for Chelsea because no Aubameyang or Sterling. It was just Hazard at striker, and it was almost like a 4-2-3-1 with basically just a who's who of Pulisic, Mount, and uh, Connor Gallagher, and you just didn't know how that was with like Ruben Loftus-Cheek. You didn't know how that was necessarily going to work out. But it did because Wolves did not have a
Mhm.
good game. Chelsea had 20 shots, 7 on target. Wolves 8 with 2. Chelsea 500 plus passing and Wolves 360. It didn't seem like Wolves were able to find enough, basically find enough like chances to for even get Douglas Costa or Diego Costa even a look at goal. So I think he was
Yeah,
subbed off a little bit, like 60 minutes. I mean,
he needs service too.
Costa made his return to Stamford Bridge, so that was kind of interesting. Like the fans like cheered him, so he won them a
Mhm.
title, so I guess maybe that's why. But yeah,
Yeah, oh,
goals from
yeah.
Havertz, Pulisic, and Brusha. So well, I'll just kind of throw the floor to you, Rex. What do you want to say?
Yeah, I'm excited about Berger getting the goal. We
Hmm.
we know like he's not going to get a lot of looks, because this Chelsea team is pretty solid. But he's done well when he comes in. I think that goal was huge for him, and I like the lineup from Potter. Not just because Pulisic started, but I kind of like Loftus Cheek back there. He's been playing pretty well, and I really want to see Gallagher too, more because I think he's a good player too. But man, I'm worried about Wolves. We kind of talked about them last week, how how bad they are offensively, and
Mm.
a player like Diego Costa comes in. We don't, he's kind of old. We don't know what he's going to do, but he needs more service. He's a player that
Okay,
thrives
great.
on balls into the box. So if you have Adama who can burn people, just make it simple. Just have Adama run by people and just keep pumping balls in the box for Costa. And they kind of really didn't do that. And I kind of look at their front four, and it's not a bad front four. They should be scoring more than they're scoring. And if they are going to just kind of play more defensive, yeah, I mean that's not really working either. You know, um, So I don't know. There's a lot of problems here, and I'm not sure Costa can really be the guy to provide steady amount of goals for them to avoid the drop. I think this is kind of I hate to say it because I like teams that play well defensively for the most part, but I do think this is probably a team that's relegation bound just because they just can't score, and I don't think Costa's going to be the answer. He might score a little bit more, but he's not going to be the answer to keep them up. I don't think. They just kind of need an overhaul of the offense. Maybe just keep it simple. Maybe just Adama burns people, Gatus burns people, and just keep sending balls into the box to Costa. I don't know. I don't know what else they can really do at this point.
I mean, they do have a pretty good connection, it seems, with the Portuguese league. I know a lot of their they're like they use like a kind of the same agent that a lot of Portuguese players at least use. He's not this guy's not Portuguese, but he does play for Porto. Uh, Mehdi Taremi is I think 29, an Iranian
Mhm.
striker. He could possibly be a gem actually in the World Cup. Well, Iran might surprise some people at least with
Yeah,
him. Yeah, maybe
yeah,
give a shot. Try to go for him in January. Because it does feel like they're going to need to bring someone in January. I don't know who that person is, but I do kind of agree with you. It just comes to not really having anyone reliable. You don't. Yeah, maybe Jimenez finds form again, but I don't.
yeah.
It's possible his race is run. Um,
Hmm.
to focus on Chelsea a little bit, Mason Mount has gotten a lot of criticism, both from English fans and U.S. fans. U.S. fans seem to think he's the reason why Pulisic is playing as much. I mean, Mount was spectacular in this game. He's basically at the heart for both goals. Wins the ball back for the first one. It might even be his cross for the Havertz goal, and then it's a beautiful ball by Pulisic. It's basically a nice little 1-2 by him. It's a disguised ball by Pulisic. It's a nice touch by Pulisic, and then a really nice chip finish. So maybe in this 4-2-3-1 kind of formation, it is different. It's like the reason uh, Pulisic and Mount couldn't really play together when
Tuchel, yeah,
Tuchel was playing that 3-4-3 system. So this allows you to kind of do that because you have a 10 in this case with also with a left wing that can play in the half space. And another thing I'm kind of noticing is Chelsea are a little bit different at switching the ball left to right, one side of the field to the other. I don't think you're starting to kind of see that. That wasn't necessarily the case as much with Tuchel. You're trying to see them basically do the ball that Trent does with Reece James, and it seems like James is good at pulling that off. But another thing too is they did play AC Milan in the midweek. They're going to have to play them again, and
yeah.
if they'd actually had a fantastic game, but they did see Fofana have an injury, so you do worry if they have enough depth at the back, if that maybe kind of shows up. But yeah, at least so far, it's a lot of pressure was on Potter to kind of get started and get started quickly. It seems like he's done that.
Yeah, I mean, it's not it's not an easy task coming in.
Hmm.
The season's already started. You got a lot of big names too. You're gonna have to bench some big players. Yeah, he's done a fantastic job. Potter Ball is coming to Chelsea, it seems, and I mean, he's doing a good job so far. If I'm a Chelsea fan, I'm excited. I think they found the
Oh,
guy.
yeah.
I always say that though, because like I thought Tuchel was the guy in the beginning. So who knows? But I am a Potter fan. He's done really well at the clubs he's been at. And he's been at some like lower clubs, Osterlunds and then Brighton. So now he'll get some money too. It's going to be exciting to see, when he actually gets to have some players that he wants and players that he thinks best fit into his system. The Chelsea team's just going to be even better. And they haven't really played that well at the start of the year, and they're already in third place, fourth place. So yeah, I think they'll rise up that table, and I don't know. Maybe they can break into the title race with Arsenal and City. I don't know, but I do kind of feel like the sky's the limit with Potter. We'll see if they can kind of be consistent because this Chelsea team hasn't necessarily been consistent this year. But yeah, I think Potter's the right guy going forward in the future for Chelsea.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a positive. You're able to get this big win. Well, you're able to get this win. It's big because it's after the back of the AC Milan game. That maybe could have
Yeah,
been a letdown.
because that was
Uh,
a
Without you're
poor
able to
game.
rest Aubameyang and Sterling. So that's good. And like you said, you got to see Broja get off firing. And Havertz is clearly a player, and so maybe you're starting to see him show up a little bit better. Maybe just a couple goals is all it might take for him to kind of find form again. So
Yeah, that's a good point. We've been talking about how we think he's kind of like the EPL Mueller. So he scored here, so yeah, maybe he can get on a hot streak, and who knows? Because we've seen him at Leverkusen, he was ridiculous at scoring. So we know that's somewhere in him. Yeah, maybe he just needs to heat up with this goal. Maybe he will.
and real quickly, a lot of speculation that Wolves have looked at Sevilla's Lopetegui, or it was Sevilla's Lopetegui. He's apparently left the Sevilla job. Do
Yeah.
you have any thoughts on that?
I don't know. Sevilla was doing terrible.
Mm,
His last game in the Champions League last week, they just looked awful. So
yeah,
I don't know. He's a high level coach, like a big name in Spain. I just don't know though. Just because that Sevilla this year has been so bad. I don't know. We'll see. He's a good coach, but I don't know, man. I just don't know. I don't know much about coaches coming from Spain over here.
true.
Uh, you know, we'll see.
I mean, it's definitely. I think it'd be an interesting hire. He's actually the player, the coach I wanted for the USMT job. A couple before they gave it to Berhalter.
Mhm.
But it's like, he did actually win Europa with Sevilla. I think they beat Inter Milan. I looked at that roster they put out last in the weekend or in the week. It was just a who's who of like 30-year-olds. I mean, I don't really
Yeah.
know. I don't know how much you can. There's no legs at all. I mean, there's like
Navas is still there.
like
Yeah.
Liverpool Suso, is like maybe like their main creator now, but it's just like Papu Gomez. I think is 30. Rakitic, Isco.
Rakitic. Yeah.
Jesus Navas is still on the team. I don't know what he could maybe do. So like sometimes teams get through a cycle and you just to rebuild. It's good to rebuild with a new coach. I think that was maybe a little bit more of that. So
Yeah. Well, they clearly need to rebuild for sure.
mhm. And we'll move on to sorry to our buddy Jeremy. We'll move on to Newcastle and Brentford. This one ends 5-2, and this did not feel like a 5-2 game to me. We'll maybe get started on that. Brentford did go with a different formation. We talked last week how sometimes they've gone with playing a little more offensively with three attackers, and they went back to a back three. But it's kind of crazy. Is Brentford did score first, but the Tony was ruled offsides. I'm shaky on this to be honest because he doesn't go for the ball, and the goal that Liverpool scored versus Arsenal. I don't know if you knew this, Rex, but there was maybe speculation that Darwin Núñez could have been called offsides because he is in an offside position before the ball gets to do it, Luis Diaz, and Darwin Núñez kind of does try to. He doesn't necessarily go for the ball, but that's the reason why Gabriel falls to the ground because he's trying to get the ball because of Núñez. But anyways,
Yeah.
so it was kind of goofy that the Embremo goal was called off, but yeah, I mean it got started with Bruno Guimaraes scoring off another set piece giveaway by Brentford on a corner kick, and then really it was just kind of Brentford's own doing. David Raya just gives the ball away to I think
Yeah.
Jacob Murphy. It's just
Poor pass.
so it's just it's not like Newcastle were flying at this point, but they were able to get a quick 2-0 lead. That's what it was at halftime, and then Tony was able to get one back with a PK. There was a handball on Dan Burn with the arm raised. I do think it's the right call. I mean, it's harsh, but I do think it's the right call. And then again, just Brentford just completely collapsed. It got started with I think Aaron Hickey and Baptiste. I think. Lost the ball to Grimace. Grimace was able to basically win the ball back, and then no one closed him down at all. So he's able to just walk all the way up to the top of the goal and had a pop. Scored, and then Alberon scored on a gift by Pinnock, passing the ball back to Ray. Ray is in no man's land. I can't really blame him there. It's a terrible pass by Pinnock,
Yeah.
who was making his first start. So it was good to see him back, but he was rusty. And
He
then
was very rusty.
to make
Yeah.
it worse, Pinnock had an own goal where I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty sure Ray is able to get this cross if Pinnock doesn't touch it. So yeah, it's we'll get started. I think with Brentford, not necessarily at Newcastle. I mean, it's to me it's hard to gauge this game because Brentford basically gave away I want to say 4 of these goals, and it's
Yeah.
horrible marking on the corner kick. So it's not like Newcastle were again playing lights out football. I think the xG was maybe 1.53 to 1.19. Newcastle did have 16 shots, but I mean, the passing was about even, like 309 to 239. So it's not like this game was a 5-2 kind of game. That's at least what I thought. But
Yeah.
what do you think?
Well, yeah, it was very questionable for Thomas Frank to start Pinnock, off the back of that long layoff injury,
Mhm.
and yeah, like you said, he was very rusty. He basically gave up a goal and then had an own goal, so that was a little that was a little weird, I guess. Maybe see him come off the bench in his first action in a while instead of starting him. But also, like, just looking at the midfield, they really need someone. They need a number 10. Like, if they had a Gamaris or Ericsson back, I think they would be in a very good place. But De Silva, Jensen, and Baptiste, you're not going to get a lot of creativity out of that. De Silva looks kind of. I mean, he looks a little rusty
He
too.
runs with the
Um,
ball. That's what I kind of
yeah,
say. He doesn't do passing. I mean, it's good to have
yeah,
runners and
exactly.
energy, but he's also not necessarily great defensively as well. But yeah,
Mhm.
I think you're right to touch on that, because what you're seeing is Brentford don't have an ability to really keep the ball, and to also when they get the ball in the final third, it's basically across into the box and just kind of hope. You don't
Yeah,
see any kind of combination play. You don't see anyone dropping deep. Getting the ball on a turn. And that is what Ericsson offered, unfortunately. So, and
yeah.
maybe Damsgaard can kind of play in that role. He has
Yeah, it's
they,
weird
they
that we
they've been
haven't really
playing him
seen
on
him
the
settle
wing.
down.
Yeah,
Yeah, we haven't seen him settle down to the squad yet either. They really miss Norgard because
I
Norgard
agree. Yeah.
is that deep lying, like he can make plays though.
Hmm.
And he's like that deep lying playmaker. I don't know. I'm a little worried about Brentford. Honestly, they're 3 points above the drop zone now, and maybe it's just Pinnock was rusty because that's two of the goals right there. Raya, like you said, gives that ball away. I don't know, man. I want Damsgaard to play a little bit more because he's kind of, we think he's the creator, the number 10 that Brentford fans have been craving since Ericsson left. And he hasn't really settled down yet, so. That's a big concern. Obviously, if he can get going, helps a lot. But we're also missing Keen Lewis Potter too. I thought he was just settling down into the squad and playing well,
Mm.
and then he
Yeah, he
got
looked really
hurt.
good
So
versus Leeds.
he
So good
did.
call.
Yeah, he did. So they're kind of, I mean, they're a little bit bare right now in the creative department because you really just have Tony and Bumo and maybe Wisa. But Canos was back on the bench, so he can help too, maybe. Because I am like I said, I'm starting to get worried about them. Their form the last couple games hasn't been great. The last three, they have two losses and a tie,
I mean, they've got to
and
they've got
they're
oh, sorry, they've got to fix up at least defending corners, at least.
yeah. I don't know why. Like since the day one of the season, that's been an issue, and they just can't seem to fix it. And we've talked about it for a long time, and they're hiring like set piece coaches and things like that, and they're pretty threatening on set pieces, but man, they give up so many goals on corners and set plays that something's got to change. I don't know how they can't figure it out because they've got some taller defenders too that can help out. I mean, me, Pennick, Ajer, they're all pretty tall, so I don't know. They have to figure that out. But I mean, they're in 11th, but they have 10 points, and relegation zone has 6. So 4 points is just not comfortable at all. And I mean, they've got to turn it around. I think they are a talented team, but they got Brighton and then Chelsea are their next two games. So I don't know. They could be slipping into the relegation zone if they lose two of those games and results behind them, below them go different. They could be in the relegation zone in only 2 weeks. So, yeah, a little nervous. 5-1 is yeah, maybe it's a little generous. The scoreline is a little generous for Newcastle, but man, it's just not good. And you can't just rely on two players to score goals. And I know they have to because of injuries, but I want Damsgaard to be that creator guy, and I don't know if he can do it. We'll see.
Yeah, another thing too. It's like it sucks to kind of simply say, oh, it's because you don't have Ericsson anymore. But we did see this stretch where they were kind of doing this from basically October to January last year or February last year, and then everything kind of switched back again because they got it coincided with Ericsson, but it also Jeremy put it up to them also getting healthier. But it is
Yeah.
kind of shaky that we have seen this kind of dip in them before. Um, uh, One thing I was kind of curious is I did want to see them in the back three with Ajer and Hickey kind of on the same side. And man, did that not work at all. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I'm curious. Maybe he went to a back three because he got Pinnock back and he figured they'd be quite secure. So, but maybe he
I
doesn't
think
think
so,
Pinnock
but
can play in the Pinnock can play with Ben Mee in it too. Um,
mm,
but I don't because I think they're both kind of they're both the same foot. Um, but
yeah.
yeah, I don't know. It's definitely Pinnock was definitely rusty. I agree with that. But
Oh yeah. Phew.
yeah,
Brentford too, yet to win on the road. They have, let me see, I think it's 3 draws and 2 losses in the 5 away games. So, that's another issue too, not winning on the road. So, a lot of things to work on, but they should have enough talent to avoid the drop. You would think. I mean, and Thomas Frank is a great coach. I think he'll pull him through. But I am starting to get a little worried, especially with that schedule. The next 2 games, we'll see where they are in 2 weeks. But maybe the World Cup helps too because they don't have a terrible amount of players going to the World Cup. So maybe that'll help. Come January, but we'll see.
well, it would be bad
Long
for
way to
them.
go
It would be bad for Norgard to all of a sudden find fitness again and then go play for Denmark. I
for
think
Denmark.
I'm pretty high on Denmark actually making a pretty big run. So and Damsgaard plays for Denmark.
Yeah,
I think he
he
starts.
scored the goal against England in the
Yeah,
was it the
France.
World Cup? Yeah, World Cup or
Well,
Euros.
yeah, England, and he had an assist that was France recently.
Yeah.
I mean, to touch on Newcastle, it is criminal that all these clubs allowed basically the new Saudi-owned club to buy Bruno Guimaraes for like $40 million last January, because he's quickly turned out to be yeah, I think he could find his way on the city. I think he would find his way on every single starting 11 in the EPL. He's playing a defensive midfielder kind of six role, and I don't even think that's his best position. I think he could play as an eight. He's just it seems like he's winning. He's always winning his duels. He's calm on the ball. He's press resistant. He's got some pace to him. He can carry the ball, and he's got a shot to him. He's starting to score goals. So
Yeah.
that is unfortunate. I mean, quietly Newcastle find themselves in sixth. Um,
Yeah.
and they visit Man United this coming weekend. That's as big of a game as Liverpool City, to be honest.
Yeah, that's a
Um,
huge game. Sunday at 9. Yeah, and Newcastle now finding a little bit of depth at the striker level, at least when Isaac and Callum Wilson are healthy.
mhm.
They have 2 really good number 9s now too. And Saint Maximin has been out. He's coming back. So yeah, scary team to play. The defense looks pretty good too. And then you got Pope back there, so they're moving up. I kind of like the way they've done it too. They haven't gone out and bought big superstars. Like they've gotten like Gamares, who they think would fit well into their team for
Well,
cheap and
we'll, we'll,
smart buys.
we'll wait on that. I think
You
it's
think it's
fine.
coming?
It's fine to celebrate the plucky new guys. With Eddie Howe, they're easy to root for. They had that movie Goal after them, so people can maybe cheer seeing Newcastle being decent again, competitive again. If they get Champions League, it'll happen. They will open up the purse strings, and that is it's frankly it's quickly it's crazy how quickly this trajectory has already happened. To be honest, they just a year last year they didn't. I don't even think they had a point. They were
Yeah,
just
they were
within
rooted at the bottom of the table.
within January, the calendar year of January to now. I think they are about fourth in points. So this is about where
Oh,
they should be.
yeah. Oh, I do have a stat on that. So the last 11 Premier League games, Newcastle have picked up the 5th most points, and that's behind City, Liverpool, Tottenham, and Arsenal.
Hmm.
So
That sounds
the
about right.
perennial kind of top 4.
Yep.
They're right outside of that. So yeah, it's been really quick. We didn't think it would be this fast.
No, and frankly, they've been able to do this. They're in fifth place. They have a chance to go above United, or I guess sixth place. They have a chance to go above United, and they've already kind of dealt with a little injury crisis. I mean,
Mm.
Target hasn't played in a lot of these games. They pushed Dan Burn to be like their left back. Joe Linton hasn't been able to play. They've inserted Joe Willock there and haven't really missed a beat. You mentioned Alan St. Maxim, he's missed, and Wilson. They missed Wilson for a little of that stretch. He's back now. Now it's funny how Isaac's not. It'll be interesting to see what Howe does when he gets both. Maybe he
Yeah,
plays both at the same time.
that'd be
So
interesting.
it is the only thing they don't necessarily he might not necessarily have a solution if Grimaris has an injury, because I don't
Yeah.
really know who would be their defensive midfielder. But other than that, yeah, it's right now Hal's got things going. So
Yeah, he's been maybe coach of the year, arguably in the Premier League. Not over the calendar year, but half of last year and the half of this season so far.
so many of
Probably
the
coach of the year in the Prem.
so many of these players are just straight up better than they were. Now maybe just Dave Bruce just terrible and just didn't develop guys. I mean, we talked about Almiron last week, and
Yeah, Almiron's a great example.
Almiron scored again.
hmm Yeah, and he had a great game last week too. So yeah, good point.
And we'll get on to move on to Crystal Palace and Leeds. This one, oh shoot, actually, I put down 0-0, but that's not it. Crystal Palace does win 2-1. The goal first from Leeds, Patrick Struck. Actually, I don't know if his first name is Patrick, but Struck scores.
Oh,
Basically,
Pascal.
Pascal, that might be it. He scores. He goes the
Close enough.
putback. The American me wants to highlight what Brendan Aronson did. Just absolutely incredible in the box. Basically dances his way to beating like 3 or 4 defenders, making them look foolish, and then gets a great shot off. It hits the post, and that's the reason why basically Leeds were able to score. Leeds were on the front foot in the first part of the game, and then
hmm
unfortunately, they weren't able to really do anything really after that. Palace only had one shot on goal the entire first half, and it came from a free kick delivery. And Edward was able to get a header, and really after that, it was an entirely different game in the second half. And it was capped off with Eze getting the all important second goal to really clinch the game. And so we'll get your first thoughts, Rex, and then I guess we'll touch on Leeds first. I guess maybe
Yeah, it's
yeah.
good to see. Yeah, I'll touch on these, but it was good to see as a back in the goals because he had that terrible Achilles tear, which is just it's a really hard injury to come back from. So it was good to see him. It was also good for Bamford to see Bamford back. He
Mhm.
missed. I'm a little salty about it, but he missed a wide open goal from a beautiful ball from deep from Adams. So Adams probably should have had an assist too. But yeah, Leeds is fun to watch. Adams and Aronson are great. Adams is a really solid defensive midfielder. He puts in good tackles. Aronson was great too, creative. He got a little
Adams.
tired,
Mhm.
but it was great to watch them.
Adams runs everywhere. You look at his heat map. He's
hmm
covering all parts of the field. And
Yeah, he's my type of player. I love him. He
pretty
just he,
much.
he runs everywhere. He doesn't give up. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just it's unfortunate for here because we want Marsh to succeed, and Leeds did frankly dominate the first half. But unfortunately, it does feel like Leeds only have basically like a plan A of playing, and when plan A doesn't work, basically Marsh's idea is to try plan A harder. Um, so Leeds do try to do the high press to try to chase the game. They run everywhere. I mean, that's great, but if a team can kind of withstand that in the second half, those legs kind of tire out a little bit. So I think you saw that a little bit. It does seem like if there's maybe a negative, it doesn't seem Marsh has maybe, like I said, a plan B, a different idea. If his first one isn't working out, where I saw Vieira actually completely change things. He switched formations. He brought on Tyreek Mitchell to go to basically a 4-4-2, and he did this because he thought they were getting absolutely outrun in midfield, so they just started to go long on the wings. And basically, one thing that Palace has is they don't necessarily have basically a controller, someone to pick passes out, but they have so many technical players on the wing. You think of Zaha, Eze, and Olise, and even Edouard. And basically, what you saw the goal come from is Zaha and Eze doing a little combination play, quick 1-2 in the box. And Eze is really cheeky here because he fakes the shot almost. He like does a feint to like get the defender to create some space, and then he fires it low near post. And it's a finish that like Mbappe like tries to do. So for some reason I don't see enough guys try to do that hard near post when
hmm
you're running towards goal, cutting inside. But yeah, I mean, frankly, I thought the game was kind of lacking for quality a little bit in that second half. So Palace were able to finally get something. But it's just a lot of these teams, or a lot of this game, was both teams kind of being similar. Both
hmm
wanting to play super direct and losing the ball. No one was really able to control tempo. Um,
Yeah, it's interesting that you say that because I'm looking at the stats here. and Leeds was 64% pass accuracy, which is pretty poor. In comparison, Palace wasn't necessarily great. They were 66% accuracy. So, yeah, to your point, just Leeds giving the ball away needlessly at times. And
I think it's the
I
worst.
mean,
Yeah,
obviously, yeah, that's not what Marsh wants to do. They want to hang on to the ball. So, 64% is not great. Yeah, that's pretty low.
yeah. I think that was the worst all weekend. You think of
Yeah, I don't.
all the teams that have played.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
didn't see lower than that. So, you're not great. But like you said, it's going for those deep balls. The accuracy, those long balls, the accuracy is, it's not going to be great. So
mm.
maybe they do just need to keep it on the floor a little bit more. Because you have some solid players in the midfield. Raka and Adams seem to be a good double pivot there, and then Aronson and others. So yeah, maybe Bamford will help that too. He did look rusty. First game back in a while. First game starting in a while. So maybe there's some positives there.
And Bamford did, like you said, he was through on goal, and he just
Mm,
he had a shot that was just like saved. But
yeah, yeah.
um,
But informed Patrick Bamford would probably bury that,
I think
and
so.
if
Yeah.
he gets informed, it would be fun to see. And I do also with Palace, I just wonder where they'd be if they had Gallagher this year. I really miss seeing him play more
Hmm.
for Palace. Decore's done a decent job, but he's not Gallagher. So it'd be interesting to see, because Easy Eze was hurt last year, so be interesting to see what Gallagher could do with an even more loaded Arsenal at his disposal.
It was a weird lineup that Vieira went with in the first half. It was like you had Decore in like that CDM spot, but just everyone else was basically an attacking player,
Attacking play, yeah.
an attacking player that likes to run with the ball, not necessarily, pass the ball or like I said, be a controller. So there's a lot of sometimes it can be kind of congested because everyone kind of wants to play the same way.
Mhm.
But it definitely worked better in the second half. That left side, when he can do Tyreek Mitchell, Eze, and Zaha all basically in a line, that's really hard, especially if they're doing overlaps. That's hard to defend against. And
Mhm.
so it was good. It was
Even
good.
with
It
Schlupp,
was a
because
good
Schlupp's
call.
pacey. Mhm.
Oh yeah, he started Schlopp actually at left back, which is
Yeah.
surprising too. Uh,
Yeah, that was surprising.
let's talk a little bit about you mentioned Tyler Adams. Let's talk about Brendan Aronson a little bit, because I think Brendan Aronson is what people think Christian Pulisic is.
Mhm.
Pulisic's very almost one-dimensional to me. He likes to get the ball on his stronger foot from the left side. I'm seeing Aronson cut with both feet, and he's very quick with the ball at his feet, and he just seems to be maybe a little bit more dangerous to me. And if Tim Way is back and playing on the right wing, we don't know what the heck Burrow is going to do at striker. It'd probably be fair. Though Pepe actually looked pretty good, for
Yeah,
the
he scored a double,
recently.
so
Uh, but if it's between Aronson and Pulisic on the left wing, Berhalter's obviously going to play Pulisic. I think Aronson's the better player at the moment. What do you think?
Mhm. Well, yeah, I think so too, and he's starting every game, and he's just playing a lot more than Pulisic too. So he's more in form. We'll see what happens. If Pulisic does get to start and gets a run of games, then. But yeah, I mean, a lot of the international game is who's playing regularly and who's consistently playing well. And Aronson and Adams are definitely two of those guys. And yeah, I think Aronson probably would get the nod above Pulisic right now, just because
Hmm.
Aronson plays every game and Pulisic, you know, isn't. We'll see what happens, but I think the Berhalter would need to accommodate both. Maybe he has to play Pulisic or Aronson out of their normal role just because they're both so good. But if I had to choose between the two, I think I'd go Aronson, Ben. Yeah.
I mean, maybe you could play Aronson in midfield. I mean, one thing that kind of maybe you touched on all the Americans doing well. Unfortunately, one American that's not doing well right now is Weston McKennie at Juve.
Yeah.
And so you think about that Adams, Moose, and McKennie has been so reliant for us. I I don't know what Berhalter does. Maybe he plays Luca Del Torre instead. That would be a worry. Uh,
Yeah. Yeah, we'll see. McKinney was actually benched in the UVA game on the weekend. He came off the bench. So, yeah, we'll see. I don't know if he was just rested or benched for form. So, we'll see. That's another storyline to look forward to in the next month before the World Cup starts,
yeah,
for sure.
a lot of U.S. fans want Pulisic to leave Chelsea. Under Potter, Pulisic should stay, but McKinney
If
should
he keeps
leave.
playing, yeah.
McKinney should leave Allegri. If leave Juve if Allegri is going to stay there, I think he's killing
He
his
he
development.
wanted to, right? I think at the beginning of the summer or the end of the summer, there was stuff coming out that he kind of wanted to leave. So yeah, good point.
Because of just being, if you're unsettled too, that can affect your form. I mean, these players are human, and
Yeah.
he's young too. We'll move on to West Ham and Fulham. This one ends 3-1. Fulham actually score the first goal with Matias Pereira. And I can't tell, frankly, if this is an amazing goal. I mean, it is a good goal, but it's from such a weird angle. I mean, Rex, you're the keeper. Do you think a keeper should be beaten from that angle?
No, yeah, I think any keeper would be mad getting beat from that position, even though it is a rocket. Yeah, anything near post at this level, should be saved. But man, it was crushed. It was really crushed. Um,
I was,
yeah, I don't know. I mean, I was happy for we talk about how like Fulham kind of rely on what's his face Mitrovic. So it was nice to see them score without Mitrovic, but just not enough, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean and then basically a lot of controversy happened. Basically, a lot of it was Fulham's own doing. West Ham were not really that good in that first half, and they were able to get back into the game because I think it's a guy that scores. Pereira basically decides to just hug, or he doesn't allow Craig Dawson to like basically make his run in the lead up to a corner kick. And what's crazy is the ref basically told him 3 times, "Hey, don't do this," and Pereira does it like a third time and just completely
Yep.
brings him down. So foolish. Uh, West Ham were able to get back in the game with a Bowen PK, and then a little controversy in the second goal. It's a great finish by Scamacca. First, he maybe even finishes because he thought it was offsides and it wasn't going to count. But it's a beautiful flick by him. It's a good find by Paqueta as well. But frankly, it looked like he was maybe offsides, and then even after that, it looked like maybe it brushed his hand. But VAR looked at it for a pretty long time, and I guess it wasn't enough to overturn it. And maybe it brushes. I don't really know. It was a fantastic finish, so it's worth it to keep the goal just for that. And it's a great ball by Paqueta. We've talked a little bit in the past.
Oh yeah.
They need someone else to kind of do something like that, and Paqueta gets the ball from Declan Rice, and he doesn't even take a touch. He just immediately flicks it. That's just the kind of thinking that you need when you're trying to break down a team. And yeah, Scamacca has turned out to be a pretty shrewd signing for West Ham.
Yeah. It was a big call to kind of bench Antonio for Scamacca recently, but I think Scamacca has rewarded Moises' faith in him with some goals. He scored in the Europa League too on Thursday,
Hmm?
Europa Conference League,
Yeah, it's 3 and
and
3
then
now.
scored in this one. Yeah, so it's a big call. Antonio's been part of their key group of players, and Moyes has relied on him, but he kind of looked leggy at the start of the year, and putting Scamacca in over him, big call, but it is definitely the right call. And now Bowen's starting to get going too. Bowen
Hmm.
was part of the reason why they weren't doing so well at the beginning of the year. He wasn't doing anything, and now he's starting to get a little better. And maybe that's the result of them getting Paqueta. Kind of
I think so.
the
Yeah.
that's kind of the number 10 that they were kind of craving, and I think he'll just get better too. So yeah, I think this West Ham team's starting to gain their legs, and they're doing a little better. And you can bring on Antonio off the bench now, and he scored. So maybe you get his legs back, and you just add a little bit more attack to this team. And Kerr's a great signing defensively too.
Yeah,
They
because
look pretty solid defensively.
you thought they were going to bring him for center back. He's actually been their
Right
starting right
back
back.
today
Yeah.
in this one. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, big. He's a big signing too from PSG. So and obviously Paqueta's a huge signing too. So yeah, a lot of positives going for this team. And we kind of thought, early that Moyes might be under a little bit of pressure.
A little bit.
And
Yeah.
this is certainly a big win. This definitely eases a lot of that pressure, and maybe they can string some results together.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much focus between Darwin and Holland, and Mitrovic is a big striker. That he was kind of getting headlines. I mean, Scamacca is 6'5" himself, and it's possible that I mean, if this guy gets going, I mean, West Ham aren't going to have issues, so they can keep him firing and healthy. And Italy's not in the World Cup, so you don't have to worry about him getting an injury in Qatar. There's a lot of all of a sudden hope and excitement for West Ham, especially this Paqueta and Scamacca pairing, especially with Paqueta almost underneath him. Yeah, that's pretty. That maybe West Ham aren't going to be as bad on the eye as they've been. They've just been like basically relying on the counter, and the team
Yeah.
they can be a little bit more creative. and finished with more
They've won two in
chances.
a row now too,
Yep.
so starting to heat up. 6 points out of six.
And then, no Mitrovic for Fulham. It was always going to be a tough ask. You did see uh, Anton Robinson back in the lineup. That's good for us. It
Yeah,
wasn't the
he was
best.
good too.
It wasn't the best day for Tim Ream. I'll just kind of
No, not Temry.
I'll just
Yeah,
kind of
but Robinson was
I'll just kind of
good.
put that. Yeah.
Robinson was good at least.
And then let's see how we're doing for time. Actually, we might need to speed it up a little bit. Leicester, Bournemouth. Leicester do kind of the shock because we thought, after they beat maybe Forest by 4-0, maybe they're going to find some form again. And no,
Mhm.
frankly, it's bad too because they scored the first goal. But Bournemouth were able to come back in the second half, first by Philip Billing. I call him Philip Coutinho, and maybe we should. And then Ryan Christie. But frankly, the shock here is Leicester were outshot 10-9. So this wasn't a smash and grab. And Bournemouth didn't necessarily pass great, but 359 for a team that we were joking about, being the next Burnley and hoofing it up. Maybe not. They're starting to play a little
Yeah.
football under caretaker Gary O'Neill. So let's start with Bournemouth. What are you thinking of him so far, or of
Oh
what
man,
he's done?
he's been great. Their last 5 games they haven't lost. 2 wins, 3 draws. They're in 8th place. We know their defense isn't the best,
Mhm.
but they've been better under Gary O'Neill for sure. And they're starting to score a little bit now too. We kind of are worried about we were worried about their offense and their defense. But maybe under Gary O'Neill, that defense is starting to get a little better. I'm still worried about the offense. They've only scored 8 goals, but
Mhm.
oh man, the story for me was more Leicester because
Yeah.
they scored in the 10th minute. It was a really good chance for them to build on the 4-0 win like you mentioned, and back-to-back wins, and a win there would have taken them out of the bottom three, and they would have been tied with Southampton on 7 points. So it was a huge loss. I think possibly Rogers' last game because
I
it was kind of his last straw.
I was surprised. Right. I think that's kind of the story. That's the story I was really expecting to see Sunday morning. To be honest, that Rogers would be out. Because
Yeah, I'm
that's
surprised
kind
it
of what
hasn't
happened.
happened yet.
That's what happened with Wolves. They weren't quick to wait. And we've talked a little bit about maybe they can go get the Celtic guy, or maybe they could try for Lopetegui. It just doesn't feel like all you're doing is basically delaying the inevitable. It seems, and maybe they're waiting.
Yeah,
Maybe they're waiting for the World Cup. Maybe they'll do it then. But yeah, I'm with you. I thought this was maybe his last chance. Um,
yeah.
and what's kind of interesting is to kind of focus on Bournemouth a little bit. One signing they did, and it was kind of under the radar. They did bring in Marco Sensei. I think that's his name. It's a center back from Feyenoord. He started to look. He actually has some quality on the ball. He helps. He doesn't just boot it away. He's one of the reasons why they're passing better. I think. He's very comfortable. He's not really pressable. He's making good decisions, and I think he's helping them keep possession a little bit more. So
Yeah,
interesting,
good call.
interesting signing from him. And they also
Yeah.
they also had a new ownership announced. So maybe some good things.
Oh, that's right.
Maybe some good
Yeah.
things going for Bournemouth.
Yeah, it's going to be the owner of the Las Vegas Knights, the NHL team. So another American owner in the Prem.
I didn't know that. Okay.
Yeah. Well, I only know because I was watching the game and they zoomed in on this old guy. I was like, who the hell is that? And then the announcer was like, yeah, he's in talks to buy Bournemouth, and he's also the owner of the LA Golden or Las Vegas Golden Knights. So yeah, more Americans, more American owners, and we'll see. They don't they don't typically do that
Yeah,
great. They don't spend that much,
maybe that's not great.
but
Yeah, maybe that's not
yeah,
great for
so
Bournemouth.
we'll see.
Maybe that's not great.
Maybe he can help the Americans'
Uh,
ownership standing by actually spending and backing Bournemouth. So I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, a lot of positive news for Bournemouth. They're moving up. It seems.
yeah, especially from where they were after that 9-0. It's just how is it the same team? And
Yeah.
to touch on Leicester for like one more minute is you mentioned the defending. I think the defending was shocking because the first goal they gave up, Dewsbury Hall is just being really lazy on the ball, gives it away, and then it's just a throw in, and they're able to basically get a run in behind. I think it's Jackson or James Justin. And
Oh yeah, Justin.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's just a running behind, and then it's a cross. They weren't able to deal with the cross, and then Philip Billings able to basically. It's a nice volley by him, but Billings should not be getting that shot off. Wrote that guy Rout was actually pretty poor on this goal as well. And then the second goal, it's calamitous as well. It's they weren't able to clear the ball, and then I don't know what Ward is doing, trying to come out. He's just his arms flailing about, and it's not looking convincing. So
Yeah, it might be time for them to put Iverson in goal because Ward has given them a lot of bad goals.
I've
So
yet I've
and
yet
I mean their defense is struggling to
I've yet
maybe
to see
change
yeah,
things.
I've yet to see anything that Rogers done that's changed.
Hmm.
In this like 4 or 5, 6 games of bad form, and that's another issue too. It's like, well, if he was making changes, maybe you could give him a little bit more leeway, but he seems out of ideas. Um,
Yeah, and he just keeps doing the same thing, and the results keep staying the same. And they have a lot of attacking players. They've scored a decent amount of goals, but that defense is in shambles, and we knew they would be when they lost Fofana and didn't really replace him. They replaced him with Fias, who I think will be a nice little player, but he's no Fofana, and he's brand new to the Premier League, so you don't really have time for growing pains there because they're doing so poor.
yep. And finally, our last game will be Nottingham Forest and Aston Villa. This one ends 1-1. This was not the best game on the eye.
Yeah, it's a
A
little boring.
goal from Dennis and a really fantastic goal by Ashley Young. I mean, the XG was like it was under 1 for both. I'll even say under point 0.5. Well, I guess Aston Villa had 0.72. Um, in Nottingham Forest with 241 passing, they got the goal and they just wanted to defend the rest of the game. But we'll touch maybe on Aston Villa first because maybe some issues for Gerrard. They weren't able to play Leon Bailey, so the front three was Coutinho, Watkins, and Brundia, and man, did this not work.
Mhm.
So it, it's good that Rodgers didn't do what Leicester did, what Gerrard didn't do what Brendan Rodgers did with Leicester, and lose to Forest or lose to like a team you imagine it's going to be in the relegation spot. But drawing here is still not good. I think there's heat on Gerrard. Villa sold Jack Grealish for $100 million, and I don't really know what that money is bought. They bought Coutinho, Ings, Bundia. I don't think that's really the money best spent. They're missing dynamic players, to be honest. Like only Ollie Watkins and maybe Leon Bailey can offer you runs to open space to allow those tens to even work. And so too often, Philip continues getting the ball, and there's nothing for him to do. So he recycles it back. Brundia is kind of the same way. Watkins was making pretty good runs, but they weren't really able to get him the ball either. It
Yeah.
was actually pretty easy for Forest to defend, and Forest haven't been a good defensive side. So
No, yeah, not at all. I also kind of feel like Watkins is just pressing a little bit too much. Maybe because he doesn't get service. He's just really really trying to score.
he's all by himself.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and he has to kind of do it all. And I mean, it's really hard. And I think he's just really really wants to score, and he's just trying too hard, and it's gotten in his head a little bit. And it's because he doesn't get the ball a lot, so he wants to make the most of all his opportunities with the ball. But yeah, I mean, it's just a weird team because
It
they
is.
just are kind of disjointed, and they have a lot of talented players. They just don't necessarily, you know, play as a like cohesive team at times. Um, and Coutinho, they bought him after he did really well on the loan spell for him, and he hasn't done much now either. So, that's another player that maybe just did well in the short amount of time he was there on the loan. You pull the trigger on him and buy him, and now he doesn't show up,
That was
and you
yeah,
might be stuck with a problem
and
potentially.
and
So,
Gerard might be responsible for that. To be honest, like it's
mhm,
because of that Liverpool connection and whatnot. I feel like they were on the same team in that 2013 team, but maybe there's some
maybe.
of that. But I agree with you. That's turned out to be a really bad decision,
I can't
especially
blame him because he played so well in the loan period. He did really well.
true. But towards the end, well, he scored for City, and I think that maybe made people like think he had a better output than he did. Towards like basically towards the beginning of April or maybe mid March to like that City game, Villa's form was awful. The
Mhm.
Gerard had that little manager bump, and Coutinho was part of that, and then they hit a slide. Some of their defenders were kind of missing games, so that was some of it too. But yeah,
Mhm.
one thing that I noticed is 20 minutes to go in the game, Forest were not even bothering to try to win the game, just defending left and right. And basically, what I saw was the midfield. I guess the midfield was Douglas Luiz would get the ball, and maybe he'd have a couple people. Maybe he'd have one guy or two ahead of him. But then there was like a 25-yard gap between him and where the front attackers were, and there was just a line of attackers. And you had basically 25, 30 yards of space. No one was trying to run into that gap. And so basically it was just the only way to advance the ball was to just go long,
Mhm.
and maybe try to win a second ball, and then maybe try to cross the ball to Watkins. There was no patterns of play, no combinations. That to me is troubling because you wonder. I mean, Gerard should know better. He should be able to like try to instill better patterns of play, at least in training. And the fact that they're not even trying to do that anymore is bad. Another thing too is, the game was up for the taking, and the only thing they could do is bring on 20-year-old Cameron Archer. They don't. Where's your bench depth at all? That's an issue. So the squad building has been kind of shaky.
It's another like missed opportunity too because you're playing Nottingham Forest. They're second to last. If that point turns into 3 points, then Villa moves all the way up to ninth. So right now they're stuck in 16th still. So it was a huge missed opportunity too.
Definitely was.
You think they'd beat Nottingham, and they just weren't able to. And I wonder if they'll be stuck in this like Southampton-ish kind of role zone here, right above the relegation zone. When I think they probably shouldn't because they have some pretty top players. So I don't know. Maybe it's not fireable now, but maybe at the end of the year, if they're still languishing down here
I
in
think he's in trouble.
16th,
I think he's in trouble
maybe he's gone. Yeah.
come World Cup. Yeah.
Do you think is it mainly just because they're not playing well, and they should be with the talent they're having? Is it system and tactics that Gerard's doing, or is it like a bit of everything?
Well, they've spent a lot under Gerard, and you're not really seeing what they bought. And now they did buy a fairly expensive center back who got hurt like basically in the first game. That's not really Gerard's fault.
Oh yeah,
Um,
Aguerd, yeah, from
they
Sevilla.
almost didn't. He almost didn't even want to play Mings. But to me, the problem is he made John McGinn the new captain. John McGinn's the worst player whenever they play. He
Yeah,
can
he hasn't been good.
he can look good on the ball in spurts, but he loses the ball a lot. He had a chance to actually maybe get the second goal. He was close in the box, and he tried a diving header, then just to try a volley. It's weird to me. Uh, so
Yeah, it's kind of a shame too because we saw Villa, they were rising with Grealish the last couple years. And we thought, hey, this could be a team that might contend for some top spaces and in the Premier League, and they were fun to watch. And then Thomas Dean is gone, and things start to sink, and the team trajectory, it was going straight up, and now it seems just to be declining again. And
yep.
they have some pretty talented players. They probably should be doing better, and we'll see what happens. But I think they're kind of just going to be in this spot where they're like in 15th place, and they're just going to be struggling to string wins together and things like that.
And probably the best thing that can happen for Nottingham Forest right now is none of these teams are going away from them. They're all in striking distance. You worry, or if I'm like Brentford or I get Villa, I guess you could, or Leicester. If I'm one of these sides or Southampton, that's kind of around Forest now. You worry eventually if Steve Cooper starts to get the lineup right and starts to get these players playing better because the actual roster does have a lot of talent. Like Emmanuel Dennis
Yeah,
can be a 15-goal striker. Brennan Johnson can do some things. Gibbs White, even like their bench depth. You've got
yeah.
that former like Jesse Lingard, uh,
Oh yeah,
Lu- Lu-
Awoniyi
Lewis
and
O'Brien, and
others.
Roman Ferreira. Like they've got a talented roster.
And
And
Steve Cooper's tied down a new contract too, so he knows he's not going anywhere. Just provides more stability for the club for sure.
so if he figures it out, and he's a good coach, he figures it out, especially because he's not going to have a lot of guys playing in Qatar either. So you're going to give him time to maybe train with a lot of these guys too. If Forrest gets on a run of form, they're going to pass all of these teams that are around them
Hmm.
because
Yeah, because they're still in it.
you see all these other teams having issues that you don't see are easily fixable. Where with Forest, it maybe is.
Yeah, they're a win out of basically being in 17th and safe. So it's all still there for them. It's there for everyone still. Even Leicester has 4 points. They're not out of it yet. So yeah, I mean, their form hasn't been great, but if they get a win, maybe they can start string. A lot of teams are like that. I feel like that's like our theme for today. If they can get a win, build on it, then they'll be in good shape. We'll see what happens. But you would think that eventually that team would start to gel, and when they do, the rest of these bottom teams are in trouble.
Yep. All right, and we did kind of go over our two, so I'll try not to spend too much time on this, but we do have quite a Sunday planned for us, Rex. With Barca, Real Madrid starting it off, and then City, Liverpool. Do you have any thoughts on both, or on either?
Oh, I don't know which one I'm going to watch primarily. I'm going to try to flip between the two.
Hmm?
But yeah, I mean, I might be watching Barca and Real Madrid more. We kind of had a text chain going around about how good Barca has been in La Liga. They've given up one goal all year in La Liga.
Oh, I didn't even know
So
that.
yeah, it's ridiculous. If you go and look at the standings, they've given up one goal all year in La Liga. So it's going to be an interesting game. I know we're a Premier League focused show, but I might be watching that more. But Liverpool and City should be good. We kind of highlight the concerns that we have with Liverpool. Maybe City kind of carve through them. I don't know. But if it's a close
It
game,
feels
that's going to be a good game too.
it feels like it could be that. Like one thing I wanted to say with the Liverpool and Arsenal game is it felt like a changing of the guard moment, where like one team's kind of cycle had ended, the other team was about to begin. This one it could really just be like City just kind of digging the grave and just kind of putting dirt on the on the gravestone. Essentially, you do kind of worry a little
Yeah.
bit about that. With Kanate back, I am a little bit more hopeful. Maybe Virgil will be better with Kanate. With Joe Gomez, maybe you won't have those issues with someone running it behind. Though Cancelo has to be licking his chops after seeing what Martinelli did. Um,
Mhm.
and then no Luis Diaz, I think is a really big. I think that's a really big miss. So I'm
Yeah.
curious to see how that works out. If Naby Keita and Oxlade-Chamberlain are good to go, I'd like to maybe see them kind of get a look at before Jordan Henderson. Definitely I need to see Thiago and Fabinho with someone else other than Henderson. I think Henderson hurts you
Mhm.
in both defensively and with the ball.
Yeah.
And one thing that is worth saying is Darwin Núñez did score versus Man City, super team, and they had Liverpool have beaten this team already. It was a Community Shield game. It wasn't necessarily a stakes high game, but at least maybe they can go into that thinking that Liverpool have done well versus City, at least at Anfield. Game is at Anfield, and frankly, Virgil van Dijk has an insane EPL record where like he hasn't lost as a Liverpool player starting at Anfield. So I mean that is on the line, frankly. So
Yeah.
we'll
Yeah, they'll definitely be on the line.
we'll see. We'll see if that holds. If they do get a result, City will definitely outplay them. But maybe they can be a little spark, and maybe some of those guys returning can help out. But other than that, it's going to be more of a hope than Klopp getting something tactically right. And then
Yeah.
for Barcelona Madrid, the thing I'm interested in is it looks like Courtois maybe won't be able to go. So we'll
Ooh.
we'll see about that. He's got a bit of an injury, and they played Andre Lunin. Oh, I can't say names. At on the weekend. It might be you think of someone like Lua getting chances versus maybe not the most experienced keeper. That could definitely
Ooh.
help Barca. But I look at this as maybe basically being like the shining stage where we've seen Vinny kind of show up and be a star in like the Champions League final, and we've seen Vinny shine a little bit in these Clásicos. I think it's time for Rodrigo to do the same. Rodrigo's
Ooh.
quietly had his fantastic start to his season. Ancelotti has even said if the Champions League final was to start today, he would he would start Rodrigo and basically not Benzema, which I think was an incredible stat or
Yeah.
thing to say. And Benzema is back
It
fit,
is.
but he doesn't necessarily look great himself yet. He missed a PK a week ago, so I think it sets the stage for Rodrigo to maybe shine a little bit. And you look at Barca's midfield, no Kesse. Frankie De Jong is just getting back to fitness, so it's going to be Busquets. Busquets versus like Chouameni. I think Real Madrid might have some fun here. So we'll see. We'll
Mm.
see if that pans
Yeah.
out. You mentioned Barca being so good defensively. That is kind of surprising to me because they don't have Aranjo and Kunde. So they have got and no Christensen. They've got a bit of a center back crisis at least for injury.
Mhm.
So we'll
Gonna be
see if
interesting.
all that works. So, sorry, wanted to get that out there. It's kind of interesting. Uh,
Mhm.
and we did go a little over. Rex, thank you for joining me again. Always
Thank you for having me.
good to hear from you. Unfortunately, we had to talk about Arsenal and talk your guys up a little bit. Maybe we might have to actually do that every podcast. It seems the way
Oh,
the way we're going.
yeah, we'll see. It's still cautiously optimistic.
Andrew texted me, and he had just had just a giant like shit-eating grin. Yeah, you could just tell. It's unfortunate to kind of got to go through that, but at least if it's going to be someone to challenge City, it's kind of cool to see someone. It's cool. It's not Chelsea or Spurs. Like I don't want to see that.
Yeah,
So
yeah, true.
at least we're getting something new. We haven't necessarily seen this. So yeah, best of luck to you and or your team Arsenal. And yeah, I guess that's it. So do you got anything to say?
No, just tune in on Spotify or YouTube if you want to see us.
Hmm?
We're pretty accessible, so we're good driving podcast. I think makes the drive go by faster. So check us out, Spotify, YouTube. I mean, we're everywhere, people. We got old episodes you can listen to as well. So please check us out.
We've been a 90-minute show, but we're gonna be two plus this time. So if you're doing that drive from basically like I don't know, Richmond to DC, you might be able to play this on and maybe get there before it's over, or maybe
Well,
not.
you'll be there. Yeah.
Once you hit Fredericksburg, it's a crapshoot. All right, I guess that's it. So I guess with all of us at the reserve squad, you stay squatting.
Stay squatty, people.
Stop recording.